Greetings! Allow me to welcome you to For the Love of Fiction, a podcast dedicated to discussing story and character across a wide range of mediums. I am your host, Gavin Groves, and with me is my co-host, Marc Tobit.
All right, man, how you doing?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
I'm feeling pumped today.
Pumped? What makes you feel so pumped?
Well, in light of the subject matter that's going to be coming up a little bit later on, I've been watching a lot of movies today, and yeah, it's my day off, and I just thought, you know what, I want some of this material to be fresh in my mind, so I buckled down and started watching, and there is only so much Godzilla you can watch before you start to turn a little weird.
I don't think it's Godzilla's fault. I think it's it's all the awful human characters that are in most of the films sort of become monotonous and they sort of they numb your brain. We will get into detail about that very shortly, I'm sure.
There are a couple of decisions that you're like, and why?
Yeah, but not too bad myself, actually. I treated myself, actually. I've been on a bit of a health kick recently with my diet, and I don't know, I didn't sleep very well last night, and we got off playing Overwatch earlier on today, and I sat there for a minute, and I started making my notes and going through my notes for this episode, and thought, what do I want for dinner? And I thought, I don't want to cook. I can't be bothered. I need a kebab shop quarter pounder with cheese and chips and a Diet Coke.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was very naughty, and it was fantastic. I felt terrible after eating it, but at the same time, I felt absolutely glorious.
There is something about eating food that's bad for you. Every now and again, you can't do it all the time, but
no. When
it's done and done, you do feel a little bit greasy afterwards on the surface of your skin, but still you feel good.
Pouring out of you. I don't know about that. So anyway, in this episode, this Godzilla special, which has been strategically placed before the release of the new Godzilla Monsterverse movie, Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. Yeah, we're going to talk about Godzilla, the Godzilla films. We're not going to go into massive depth about the Japanese, let's say, superhero Godzilla films too much, because there's so many of them.
They are prolific, aren't they, man? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Look at the list; it's insane.
It's in the Guinness Book of Records for the largest film franchise in the history of cinema.
Yeah, it totally beats the likes of Bond and the like, doesn't it? It's
everything. It beats everything. Bond is nothing, mate. It steps on Bond and pees on it from a great height, to be honest with you. But so we'll sort of chat a little bit about a couple of the Japanese films, and then we will talk about the Monsterverse in part 2 of the podcast, and then in part 3 we will go into a deep dive into 2 of the most mineable Godzilla films, which is Shin Godzilla and the most recent Godzilla Minus One. So looking forward to that, Marc. Hopefully you will have watched them by the time we start talking about them. We will see.
I'll check them out, I'm sure.
In the next, 2 hours, if we're going by recording time.
I'm queuing up my phone right now as we're talking.
multitasking. So anyway, let's get straight into this. Not going to waste any time this week because we've got a lot to get through. Let's talk about Godzilla 1954. Have you ever seen this movie, Marc? I must ask first of all.
I have not.
So, well, let's start from the top. Godzilla, obviously, is the world-famous fictional monster or kaiju, which debuted in the eponymous 1954 movie Gojira, written and directed by Ishiro Honda. Since then, Godzilla has become one of the most recognizable cultural icons in the history of anything, ever. Ever.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's been referenced numerous times across all sorts of media and any sort of giant monster creation.
I think he's up there with me. I'm going to be honest. I think he's up there with Mickey fucking Mouse, mate.
I would 100% agree with you on that one. He's an iconic image in cinema in general.
Yes. Do you know what the word Gojira actually means?
I believe, is it a portmanteau of gorilla whale?
Yes. Remember this. This will come important later on. So, anyway, in the original 1954 Japanese Godzilla movie, Godzilla was a prehistoric, a reptilian monster dinosaur thing, who knows, and is awakened and mutated by nuclear radiation, with the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki still filtering through the social consciousness of Japan, Godzilla was created as a metaphor for these horrific disasters, and the United States, I quote, referenced as a giant beast woken from its slumber that then takes terrible vengeance on Japan. This film is commonly, it's true though.
Yeah, that's a standard metaphor right there.
Commonly accepted to be the first kaiju movie. Do you know what the word kaiju means, Mark?
I do not know.
So the word actually refers to ancient Japanese legends, and even earlier than these ancient Japanese legends, the word appears in some classical Chinese literature called Chinese Classic of Monsters and Seas, and it's a compilation of mythical beasts. If you look at the artwork, you actually see some inspiration for some of the various monsters and kaijus that Godzilla fights over the years. So yeah, it's quite cool. Yeah. So Godzilla appears and wreaks havoc on Japan, and due to his immense power, triggers fears of nuclear holocaust in a post-World War II era. So this film spawned an American re-edit starring future Ironside actor, should we say, Raymond Burr, called Godzilla King of the Monsters. In 1956, I believe this was when it was released. So at the time in Japan, when Godzilla was released, I don't know if you can believe this or not, Mark, but it was actually accused of being exploitive and mainly a film of sensationalism.
Well, because they felt that the aspects of nuclear energy and everything was a shot being taken at them or something.
No, they felt like it was using the most horrific event in Japanese history as a way to make money. It was labelled, I quote, as grotesque junk.
Jeez.
And when we look back at this film now, that's not how we view it, really.
I mean, this started the wave of like the concept of. Is this one of the first examples of the mutation through radiation into in the same fashion as Hulks and Spider-Mans and stuff like that?
I'm pretty sure it was one of the earliest anti-nuclear pieces of media created. But anyway, apparently it took the American critics to appreciate the movie in order for that appreciation to filter over to Japan, which is kind of weird when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's like that the Japanese film sort of empowered the American guilt of the bombings. Anyway, as you know, is common knowledge, over time, assessment of the film has changed, and it is accepted to be an important event in world cinema and a masterpiece for its allegory and themes. Except, of course, for my personal favourite film critic, Roger Ebert, who gave it 1.5 stars. That is very sad.
Well, you reckon? Even with your favourite critics, you're never going to align with their opinions all the time.
That's the point, exactly. You know,
did he justify his opinion on it?
Absolutely. He just found it a trashy, horrible film. That's really, really important. And this is reviewing it in the 60s, maybe? I'm not sure, but I don't agree with everything he says. I don't need critics to tell me what is good, and I don't only go by what critics say. I read Roger Ebert's essays, especially because I enjoy his writing, and he's also can be quite funny. When he's cutting, he is YouTube critic level cutting 30 years before it was a thing. He's very funny. Anyway, I'll give you.
This won't be the last time that Ebert comes up in this pod, will it?
No. His most famous quote, actually, I'll tell you now, is for the film North from the 90s. Do you remember this film?
That was the one with Bruce Willis in a rabbit suit, wasn't it?
I quote, I hated this movie.
Oh, that's pretty succinct.
Yeah.
He made a really convincing argument there as well.
Anyway, back to Godzilla again. I just want to give you very quickly my opinion on the movie. This is a dark and sober movie with a lot to say. And its stark photography is actually really, really effective. But what makes it most effective is the focus of the horror in the reactions of the Japanese people in the wake of this disaster that's happening. There's so many shots of people in pain, crying, being taken to hospital, like a literal disaster, and it really, 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 really knocks you for six. Seeing human hearts break on screen repeatedly, so effectively, evocatively, is what makes the horror of Godzilla so palpable. It really is something else for me personally. Obviously, you have to accept that the special effects are a bit crude, but whatever, you take it or leave it.
Time. Yeah.
Exactly. But to talk about the ending, Godzilla is killed by the prototype oxygen destroyer, and the professor, doctor who creates it, says out that there's great concern about using it. He feels that if he uses it to kill Godzilla, its effectiveness would mean that it will be replicated by the world powers and used like the atomic bomb. So he burns his notes and sacrifices himself when he uses it on Godzilla to ensure that such a powerful weapon is never used ever again. It's,
that's
evocative
right now.
Yeah, it is. It's really, really good. It's really, really good. It's very effective and very moving, in my opinion. Anyway, so we're going to skip pretty much all of what is known as the Showa era, which is where, I think, from the beginning of Godzilla versus Kong, we get the majority of the silly Godzilla movies. But just want to talk really about our first experiences with Godzilla. So, which I believe, as we briefly discussed earlier on, Marc, this is where your experience kind of starts, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when I was younger, I used to watch. I'd imagine it's a relatively well-known show called Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh, never heard of it.
It was through this show that I got to appreciate a lot of immensely bad movies. I mean, things like Manos: The Hands of Fate, things like that. These movies I otherwise would have never given time of day were rendered inherently far more watchable by virtue of the riffing these guys used to do.
What did you watch this on?
I used to watch it on the old Bravo channel back in the days of cable.
So how old were you?
I must have been about 14 or 15 at the time.
It's kind of amazing that this kind of media was made so long ago, really, isn't it? When it's just rife today, really, isn't it?
It's one thing I love about Mystery Science Theater is it's on YouTube in its entirety. Mm-hmm. And I love it's the sort of thing I love to put on just before I'm going to go to sleep at night, because it's the perfect kind of engages you up to a point, then it's easy to fall asleep to.
So explain briefly what it is to people who haven't seen it, because not everyone may be aware of it.
Mystery Science Theater is three comics who's let's see if I can remember the names. You had Michael. Oh my God, I've gone totally blank on their names. Michael Joel. It was split into. It's a 10-season series split into 2 5-season portions. One of which was Joel, and one of which was Mike. Both of which are immensely funny. And I'm not going to say which one I support more, because that's a polarizing argument among the Mystery Science Theater fans as well as to who you prefer more. And you've also got, he's accompanied by 2 robots, and the 3 of them sit on the satellite of love, and they watch bad movies as some evil big bad tries to break his mind with bad movies. And it is watching the movie with them riffing in the lower corner of the screen, just generally making observations and jokes about the things that are happening. And it's hard to explain why it's funny, because I feel that my explanation doesn't do it justice if you've never seen it.
It probably almost sounds like old hat, to be honest, if you compare, because that kind of media is so popular today.
Exactly.
On YouTube,
in this current day of YouTube, that is pretty much most people's bread and butter. But these guys were doing it 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And they've moved it up to the likes of Riff Tracks. That's the current company which does it for modern day movies now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they've turned it into an immensely successful business. They do live shows where they just sit in front of an audience and they riff on all sorts of movies.
Oh, they are funny. I remember you showing me the riff tracks for The Matrix, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Their comedic timing is absolutely brilliant. And the way the 3 of the guys play off of each other is brilliant.
Yeah.
But aside from that, they also did a large number of the Godzilla movies. Not so much the original classics. I feel that's not one that would lend itself well to riffing, but the one that they covered is also one that's also highlighted in the intro sequence to the show, which is Godzilla versus Megalon.
Oh, this is a Godzilla movie.
Now, I can't tell you too much about that movie because, to be honest, sometimes when you're watching riff tracks, you don't really take in the plot of the show because you're more focused on the jokes and whatnot. But I do remember a sequence where Godzilla surfs on his tail along the ground, and there's no other way to describe it than that. Like, if you can go out there, look for Godzilla in Mystery Science Theater 3000 intro, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It looks so hokey, but you can't look away. It's utterly brilliant and terrible at the same time.
The truth is, this is the balmiest of the Godzilla movies from the Showa era by far. I mean, as I said,
refresh my memory. Is he in the middle of doing an attack or something when he does that, or is he?
I'll explain it to you very, very briefly in a second. Because I'll tell you how I discovered Godzilla. Aside from the next main film we're going to talk about in the franchise, is I believe they started showing Godzilla on Channel 4 in the UK when I was a kid. And I think the first one I might have watched was Son of Godzilla, and then we used to tape them. And Godzilla vs. Megalon was one of the ones that we taped. Me and my brother would both watch them. Anyway, Godzilla vs. Megalon's an interesting movie. It features like aliens in togas. It's kind of weird. Megalon itself is quite an interesting like insect beetle-like creature. It features like one of the most annoying young characters in the history of film. Like, oh my God, I'll never forget it. Because it's about like two friends who are basically building their own Ultraman ripoff called Jet Jaguar. Do you remember this?
This is all hazy to me right now, man.
Right. And basically what happens is Jet Jaguar and Godzilla team up. And the sequence you're talking about, where Godzilla is like flying across the map, so to speak, or the environment, is because Jet Jaguar is holding Megalon at hostage while Godzilla drop kicks him, and they're like double teaming Megalon. Sorry.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's a very, 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 very silly movie, and like one of the last ones, I believe, from the era, because after that, they released The Return of Godzilla, which was not just the return of Godzilla, it was the return to the more dark and serious form of Godzilla. There was a cartoon, I believe, in the 80s, which featured a very green version of Godzilla. Incidentally, that reminds me that Godzilla was actually a Marvel Comics character as well, wasn't he? That's weird, right? But he was
along with lots of Transformers and stuff. They had a lot of licenses, didn't they?
They did the Star Wars comics as well. The official Star Wars comics.
Why did they never do a crossover?
I don't know. Who knows? But and there was Godzuki, wasn't there? Like the son of Godzilla.
Fuck me, man. I hated Godzuki.
Yeah, I remember hating Godzuki.
Man, he has got that scrappy-doo energy like you would not believe. And he could fly, and it was...
Yeah. I remember having, like flappy arms. Is that right?
Yeah, he used to glide around, and Godzilla would be like Godzilla, and then you had Godzuki like Godzuki, and it was...
Oh, no, that's right. Oh, that hurts. That hurts so much. I was almost like... I can remember that. You just pretending to do his voice has really, really cleared the image in my mind, because for some reason I was picturing Denver the Last Dinosaur at one point, but that was definitely not. No. That had a great theme tune, though, to be fair.
That was pretty rocky. That was a 90s hair metal sort of intro.
Yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, The Return of Godzilla. The Return of Godzilla is a return, literally, to the darker, more serious approach, and marks the end of the Showa era before and the beginning of what is known as the Heisei era of Godzilla movies. This is really the film that ignites my love of Godzilla, because I liked like the silly films, but when I watched the American redub recut, which became known as a Godzilla 1985, I'm pretty sure this came from renting it with my dad. Maybe. I'm not sure. Actually, I can kind of remember watching it at home in Picasso Way. Adam might be able to clarify this if he's listening. But they brought back Raymond Burr, Ironside, to play the same role he did in the original 54 American recut. I think, if I remember correctly, he's called Steve Martin. That's weird.
Yeah.
And yeah. And basically, like, the character of Steve Martin sort of plays an American onlooker, giving his perspective on what's happening. They sort of inserted him into the original 54 film because they felt like Americans wouldn't want to watch a black and white subtitled movie. So he's there sort of to be not subtitled so that people who are stupid will understand what's going on, which is terrible, really, when you think about it. But Burr has this great voice. And as mentioned briefly in the 54 film, there are some great, like, narrative, like, strokes, let's say, you know. And one of the most memorable parts of the Return of Godzilla / Godzilla 1985 is when they kill Godzilla off, and it's like steered into my imagination. They have this, like, super weapon called the Super X with this really cheesy, like, theme, and, like, it's like a super powered spaceship, and, like, it can't destroy Godzilla. I seem to remember Godzilla throwing a skyscraper at it eventually at one point for some reason. And he destroys that. And what actually happens is they use this device, I want to say, that, like, plays a certain sound, and they lure Godzilla into a volcano. And the image of Godzilla just sort of walking towards this volcano, and this really sad, beautiful music playing. All these films have got great music. And then falling into the volcano, and Raymond Burr sort of narrating over it, talking about how Godzilla sort of represents, like, the sins of man, and how he's really a victim and of man's hubris and whatever. It, like, really moved me as a kid, and I can actually remember, like, crying, I think, when I watched it as a kid. That scene of I could see it now, that scene of him just falling into the lava and screaming and dying, you know, like, it's really powerful. And, like, because of that, I've always had this, like, intense emotional connection with Godzilla for some reason, not because I feel like it.
No, because something like that
empathy.
makes you empathize. Yeah.
It's empathy. And so, talking about empathy for Godzilla, we're going to skip the Heisei era, and we're now going to sort of, as I said, I want to talk about, like, when it comes to the mainline films, let's say. And I suppose Godzilla 1998 counts as a mainline Godzilla, or maybe or maybe we're just talking about it because you've got to talk about this movie, haven't you?
It's one of thing is about this is, whilst it's not a milestone in the Godzilla franchise,
kind of is. The
thing is, it's notable. I mean, there are a number of names for the Godzilla that turns up in this movie, aren't there? I believe you have one.
Yeah, there's two, isn't there? There's Gino, which is Godzilla in name only.
And Zilla is the other one. Yeah,
that's what they called him when they brought him into Godzilla Final Wars, which is...
He gets utterly trounced there, doesn't he? So...
That's right, yeah. There's like a sequence towards the end of the film where Godzilla's, like, just fighting, like, loads and loads and loads of kaiju across the planet, and just randomly ends up fighting Zilla from the 98 film and completely annihilates him. It's kind of funny, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a fuck you, too.
Yeah, but this is... This film came out in the era of the summer blockbuster, didn't it? You know, it was written by Dean Devlin, directed by Roland Emmerich. I mean, I don't know. Stargate is, like, an okay movie. I kind of like it, and, like, Independence Day is, like, a guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
but
Emmerich does have a lot of style over substance in his movies.
I get off the train at this point. I don't think I've only seen the first 3 movies. I've never watched. Four, because there's another film he made. Actually, I would say his best film.
Which is?
Universal fucking Soldier.
God damn, I forget about that. That's not anywhere near the tone of the rest of his, like, back catalogue. That's a brilliant movie.
Dolph Lundgren turned up to 11.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, yeah. It's a brilliant movie.
But
it's nothing like anything else that he made since.
It's mad. I'm all ears. Anyway, so let's talk about the promotion of this film, because I actually remember seeing the trailer for this film in the cinema. Did you see the trailer for this film in the cinema?
Oh, you're chatting about the museum with the T-Rex like statue, like the fossils.
Yes.
And this was the largest, like, predator or carnivore that preyed on the earth, and then the foot comes through the ceiling.
Yes, yes, it was like so exciting, and then Godzilla comes up. I remember as a kid being like so excited.
Yeah, I am so fucking ready. I suppose because
Yeah.
you'd had the history of watching the classic Godzillas, especially.
Yes,
So.
yes. I hadn't seen the '54 film. Bear in mind, I didn't watch that till I was older. But yeah, I was so ready for this film, and it's funny because maybe it's because of the nostalgia critic. It's become very, very popular to hate on this movie. Everyone turns around and goes, "Oh, this is the movie that made me realise that films could be bad," or "I hated this movie." But the truth is, like, while it didn't make as much money as Emmerich's movies before, like, I was a kid at the time when I watched it, and I kind of liked it for what it was, you know? Watching it now, it's a hard watch. It's a hard watch nowadays, but like...
Yeah, it's a great example of the 90s summer blockbusters.
Yeah, and that very concept has aged very, very badly, really.
Yeah,
you know,
because that was a dark era of cinema.
Yeah, well, there were great films as well. I mean, this, you know, but like those are the ones that didn't make money. So I just want to run down like thoughts on this film very quickly. So, what did you think of the design of Godzilla in this movie?
Oh, he is notably different in terms of the way in which he walks. He is much more T-Rex in design compared to the normal Godzilla design.
Yes. That big jaw as well is kind of weird.
And his snout's very different. It's much more slanted from his forehead straight to his nose rather than having the more pronounced snout.
Yes.
That you see in most of the Godzilla movies.
Yes.
And I mean, with nothing, if you had none of that lore beforehand or since, and you just saw that as a standalone movie, it'd be an alright movie.
I'm not being funny, but I think in the 90s we were all much more innocent, and we'd watch it and go, "Oh, you know, that's as good as a Godzilla movie can be, really, isn't it? You can't be any better than that." Yeah. You know, as a kid, I watched fucking George Clooney as Batman and was like, you know, wow, he was all right. I watched Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze and went, you know, he was all right because I didn't know any better, and I was like, that's as good as it can be, really, isn't it? You know,
you had no point of reference.
Obviously, he wasn't as good as Michael Keaton at the time, but anyway, talk about Godzilla movie. And yeah, we didn't have any reference. What could an American? I mean, when you go back and look at this film now, the CGI looks awful. And like, even like this film came out 2-3 years after Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park still kind of looks okay.
Yeah,
this film visibly looks
up. Yeah,
this film looks worse for some reason. But yeah, it's an odd design. Again, yeah, at the time I was indifferent. I was like, whatever. When you look at it now, you're like, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
they lean too heavily on CGI for a lot of the sequences, and which Jurassic Park didn't.
It was a mixture, wasn't it? It was a mixture. That's the thing. They blurred the lines between practical and CGI so that you couldn't tell the difference half the time when it was CGI. And
also, that's is this the movie where we get the return of Ebert back into the pod?
Well, hold tight. This, I was just gonna say, let's talk about the fact that in this film, Godzilla is in an iguana that is mutated because of French nuclear testing rather than Japanese.
Taking a shot there, are we?
Not sure about that. Anyway, yeah, going on the characters. So, yeah, that is a funny little side, isn't there? That you have a couple of actors playing Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, the American film critics. That was like a stab, wasn't it, at them like slating all their movies. And when they actually came around to reviewing this film, they both said, "I'm not being funny. It is honourable that you've, you know, paid a couple of actors to pretend to be us, but you didn't even like take the mickey out of us very well. You didn't even have the monster kill us," which is actually pretty funny, really.
That's a valid point as well.
Yeah. But yeah, the characters in this film definitely pose a problem.
Yeah.
While they are definitely more, let's say, interesting than some of the characters in many of the other Godzilla films, even today, because they certainly stick out because they're fucking cartoon characters or caricatures, really, let's be honest. Like, they are quite annoying. I mean, you know, Matthew Broderick seems to be phoning it in all the way through it. He
does give some very wooden sort of like reactions to sort of stuff that really should have more of a passion and stuff like that when you've got a 300-foot tall monster like careening down a city.
He's awful in this. He's absolutely awful. And then you've got like the Simpsons fucking actors for some reason.
Hank Azaria and Harry Shearer.
Oh God, what are they doing? You know, what are they doing? Oh my bloody
I
God.
tell you though, there is one shining light in the cast in this movie.
I know actually what you're going to say. Before we get to that, I just want to talk about how fucking unlikable and awful Matthew Broderick's girlfriend is as well. She is so awful and horrible and unlikable and such a bad actress.
The thing is because I don't know if they're just hoping that Godzilla's going to do all the heavy lifting in terms of the drama because
they just didn't know how to write women. Yeah, frankly, they're just they're misogynistic as fuck. There's 2 female characters in this, and one of them is a complete cunt, and the other one is a doctor. Just sizes up and fancies Matthew Broderick's character. It's so awful. Anyway, sorry, what was you going to say about a certain actor that's in this film that actually pulls his weight a little bit and makes the scenes that he's in reasonably enjoyable?
It is my man, Jean Reno, man.
My man, Jean Reno. That's right. Yeah. He is the man. Can this man be bad in anything? I don't think so.
But he makes it look effortless. Like he is.
That's what I'm saying.
He's giving it the same casualness as all the other characters, but the difference is he looks good when he does it.
He's so good.
Like he puts effort into being so laid back, and he does it so well. He's just brilliant.
Yes,
ever since Leon and everything he's done since, man, I've always enjoyed watching that man in movies.
I tell you who is a little point of this actually is Kevin Dunn, who is actually an okay actor. He actually plays Sam Witwicky's dad.
Oh yeah, I know him,
and he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah, he brings it. I mean, he's not no powerhouse like Reno, but he's still fine. Yeah, I see what you mean.
What do you think about the Jurassic Parkness then of the baby Godzillas?
I don't know if that was just a way for them to stick Act 3 onto this story without it being yet again Godzilla got away and we don't know where he is.
Or a way to set up a future movie as well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that reveal. Yeah,
it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, and like the way it's done, it's like
it's exactly as predictable as you expect it to be. It's just it's just an excuse that if this movie pulls it off, we've got an out to make another one.
Yeah. So, it just sort of copies and replicates all the the points from Jurassic Park, but it doesn't do it with any of the panache or skill. It's just all silly and they're all dumb and stupid and not a threat in the slightest. It's pretty bad.
Yeah,
it's pretty very bad. They're also when it is quite funny that the American government end up destroying more of the city trying to kill Godzilla than Godzilla does. Mm-hmm. But when they finally kill Godzilla, they try to incorporate that human Godzilla interaction that I was talking about earlier on, right?
Oh, with the heartbeat and everything with him on the
booth. This is in almost all of the Godzilla films at some point. A human will at some point see Godzilla, man looking at God, basically, and there'll be a moment where they recognize each other, and often Godzilla will not react. This happens later on, obviously in 2014. We'll talk about that in a second, and leave them alone or whatever. And they try to replicate that in this, don't they? But there's a problem with this scene because just when it happens, and Matthew Broderick's Dr. Totopoulos character is getting closer for the payoff, emotional payoff. The moment the Hobbit stops, everyone starts cheering.
Yeah, it kills any sort of emotional tone you were going for.
Rather than this poor creature that we created because of man's hubris that has gone around and just tried to live and we've hunted it down, even though it's killed lots of people. But, it's accident that happened, this tragedy that's happened. Yay.
It's hardly a kind of a Beauty Killed the Beast sort of moment, really, is it?
It's odd, isn't it? And one thing I want to know as well is also, why does the Japanese guy call him Gojira at the beginning? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why? Why? Did you think that looks like a giant whale gorilla thing? That's a Gojira.
God.
It's awful. I do quite like the fact that all the Americans call it Godzilla because it's like a mistranslation and misinterpretation of the Japanese person saying Gojira, because it does sound like he says Godzilla because of the accent, which is I think is actually kind of funny.
It's one way to go, yeah.
But there's actually 2 positive things that came out of this film, actually. First of all, I miss the advent of the themed pop song that came from Blockbusters, don't you? You're coughing there, you all right?
No, I remember the songs that came out with this, and I remember Puff Daddy.
we got two with this song. It was
Puff Daddy, that was it.
That's right. Deeper Underground. I mean, in our group of friends, that song has become immortalized thanks to Brinstar, forever immortalized. And Puff Daddy with like Jimmy Page banging out the riffs,
come with me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was my first interaction with Led Zeppelin, I believe it was, isn't it? Yeah.
That was it. Yeah, I can't remember which Led Zeppelin song it was, to be honest with you. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Not off the top of my head, but it might be "Come With Me." I don't know, but nonetheless,
that
was a riff. Yeah, that was a riff.
I miss licensed songs like that in the charts. I remember seeing it's like they were like extended.
You did "Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me" for Batman Forever.
Probably the best licensed film song ever released, in my opinion. Straight up, not a hot take. That song is.
Oh, go on, give some love to "Kiss for a Rose."
I do like it, but come on, man, it's not "Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me." That is fucking awesome, man. What a great song. But Men in Black as well, I really like, by Will Smith. But I always remember my dad recording the Turtle Power song for me.
That is a
banger. And then going back and like rewatching the music video, because I just wanted to see clips of the Turtles because I hadn't seen the film yet.
T-U-R-T early power. Yeah.
We'll be coming back to that one day. I assure you. One day there's going to be a Turtles episode. One day it has to be.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's Godzilla 1998. Sorry, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible today. It's almost unwatchable. There's not really anything redeemable in it apart from the shot.
I refuse to rewatch it for this pod, man. Seriously, I was looking at the movies that I was going to rewatch, and I've rewatched a couple of them, but that was one I ain't touching.
Well, speaking of films that you've rewatched for the podcast, Godzilla 2014 is what I'd like to bring up now. This is the start of the Monsterverse. So, how did you feel about this movie, rewatching it today?
I watched it 6 hours ago, and it was I think it's the third time I'd watched the movie and all. But it had been a couple of years since I'd watched it.
Mm-hmm. I
really like this movie, man.
I'm with you, man.
I really like it.
I love this movie. To be frank,
the thing I criticised it for initially as well, I don't criticise it for as much anymore.
Yes. Because while I do think this film is flawed, repeated viewings lower your expectations, and you start to take it for what it is. And there's an elegance to it, like the film that really influenced it, Jaws. There's an elegance to the fact that we only get a little bit of Godzilla in it.
Yeah, but
harkens back to films back in the day, doesn't it? When they teased us as viewers, rather than everything just being bang, 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 never ending, constant. Even Iron Man, was you only got 20 minutes of Iron Man in a suit in that,
But it was enough, and the fact that the anticipation is what made the payoff so good.
Yeah.
Although in a later movie, which we'll touch upon today, they go kind of the opposite direction with that.
Well, we'll get to that.
We'll come back to that. But this movie, you're right. It teases you. It kind of, you know what you're here for, and you know what to expect, but it doesn't give it to you until it's good and ready. And the starting off with the first kaiju that you see, which is the Mutos. That's a trippy design in and of itself. It's just
I like it. I like it. I like the fact they thought really hard about it, and there's a life cycle there. There's a male and a female, and the female's bigger and whatever, and it's like
the design of those hooked feet and everything looked strange and just and everything about it was like, okay, so this is an interesting villain, for want of a better term.
Yes,
antagonist. That would be a good word.
It looks like a threat. That's the most important thing, I think. They look like actual threats. They don't look like giant monsters.
Yeah, they're not apex predators, but they look like predators nonetheless. So.
Yeah, this is a film with, Gareth Edwards. All of his films look amazing. It's got incredible, cinematography. Everything just looks so good. The colours, the angles, everything is filmed so interestingly. Edwards is a master of scale, isn't he? One of the biggest problems with all the films that come after this is that none of them are made by him. None of them have the sense of majesty, and the enormousness of,
Oh, that shot where they reveal him for the first time with the squadron on the building where they fire their flares up. And then you realise they're illuminating his
skydive.
Oh, yeah, that was just incredible.
Incredible, A visual feast. Did you see this at the cinema?
I believe I did, yeah.
Yeah, I was absolutely...
Yeah, when it pulls back and it shows the long-distance shot of those men descending from the clouds onto the city.
Yes.
That was... It takes your breath away.
Yeah, I think you were just about to say, sorry, I interrupted you because I'm just too passionate about this film.
Yeah.
When the flares go off and they light up and you're not sure what you're looking at, and suddenly you realise you're like looking at his arm or his side, just the scales, his scales, his skin, and that's it,
There's also the fact that a couple of moments after that shot, you see Godzilla in all his glory, just stood there, and you realise the utter difference between him and the 98 version. That this Godzilla, when he's standing there looking at you, looks like a fucking thug. He just looks like he is ready to kick your teeth in.
He's ready to mug you.
Yeah, he does. It's just the way he holds his arms. He's so much more upright, and he's got that glare, that way in which he could just look at you, and you're like, "Oh shit, I'm fucked."
Yes. They based it much more on the Toho Godzilla, didn't they?
Yeah, much more upright kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, he does go down to his paws when he needs to for for more dynamic movement and stuff. But when he is squaring off against it, there's something about this Godzilla that just looks utterly terrifying. He's almost pyramid shaped.
Yeah, he's bottom heavy, like Godzilla always is.
Yeah,
actually, you'll notice when you watch it in the future. Of this podcast, I guess, maybe in Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One, that's something they really nail in these chapters. That his legs are enormous. He is very, very bottom heavy, and that's always been kind of paramount to his design. If
a creature like this was going to evolve, he would need to have legs like fucking skyscrapers to be able to support that sheer mass.
Absolutely. It
makes no sense to have spindly kind of T-Rex legs on something that weighs tens of thousands of tons.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember reading somewhere that they sort of based his face and look on a combination of animals, and that his stance, is sort of based on a bear, which
I see that. I can see when an upright bear that's kind of squaring off. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is one. I did mention that this film is quite flawed, though. It's it is like a 9 out of 10 that is nearly a 10 out of 10. And
it makes some choices with some plot directions that I personally would not have chosen.
Yeah, that's right. So let's start from the top then. It nearly has the best human characters in the entire franchise. Nearly. It's so close. Because Bryan Cranston is one of the best actors of the last, 20, 30 years.
He's
by far.
He is a fucking gift. I love it.
He's incredible, and he is absolutely incredible in this film.
Yep.
His
sequence where he's at the end of the corridor, just watching his waiting for his wife to come in, and he knows that he doesn't have he can't save her, and the emotion that he managed to elicit when he finally just gives a cry, that kind of scream of despair before he slaps the button and everything, and then being forced to watch her through the window.
Yep.
That final, and not many actors could have pulled that off.
Not many, no. He has this gift of coming across as so believable, and that is one of the things that's most important. Is that in a story with giant monsters, you need believable, relatable human characters to carry you through the movie.
And react, and
yeah. And the problem is that they not only do they kill him off, which I believe Cranston has said himself was a mistake. I believe Gareth Edwards, the director, has come back and said it was a mistake. Not only do they kill him off, but the actor that takes over his role, the character, his son in the film, Aaron Taylor Johnson is not a good enough actor to carry this movie after taking it over from Bryan Cranston.
When I first watched this movie, I didn't know much of Aaron Taylor Johnson. I know more of him now. I mean, I didn't make the connection that he played Kick-Ass when I first saw this movie. And haven't seen him do that, like Sir Quicksilver. And actually, I saw him recently in a movie called Bullet Train with Brad Pitt. And he was the best part of that movie. He's immensely entertaining. And I've really suffered towards him in terms of being the main for this movie.
I don't dislike him. Yeah. It's just that he is
coming off the back of Cranston, exiting the stage, you're kind of...
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Are we getting this guy now? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess he's all right, but we just lost Cranston.
There's only one thing in this movie big enough to carry a movie. You know, after Bryan Cranston, that's fucking Godzilla himself.
Yes.
Like, you know, like he is a master of, both of them are masters of chewing the scenery. You know, and like it just, it's so frustrating. I mean, you have to ask yourself, in terms of the narrative, the military takeover, I guess they needed a military person to be at front and center, to be there.
Yeah, to justify being the main character going down on the parachute dive. And
Yeah. I kind of get that. So they would have had to have written things a bit more smartly or rearranged the writing a little bit. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? I'm sure they could have done. I don't know. But... or at least just have him in it. I don't know. It's hard to say, really.
He needs to die, but
yeah, it's just. I get raising the stakes, but as I just mentioned, the problem is it's the hole that he leaves in the narrative. That is the problem.
Yeah,
you know. So it's a shame. It's a real shame. But
I will say the conflict in this they fucking brought it in terms of the fighting. That really, I really enjoyed all the sequences of the kaiju fighting in this one.
Oh, right. I would say they're the best in the entire Monsterverse, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because, like I mentioned earlier, Gareth Edwards just brings a sense of scale and size, and they move slowly and majestically, to use that word again, and they're bellowing around. Everyone just comes across as so huge and impactful and weighted. In the cinema, I just remember, my jaw must have been hit the floor. You know, because while we were just saying that, like, this film does sort of tease you a little bit, I think the sequences which, on paper, when you think about it, are kind of funny, like the initial Godzilla reveal, then goes to watching Godzilla fight the Muto on a TV screen. Like, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like, you cheeky fuckers, like, come on.
Yeah.
That was a bit cheeky. And then you have the bit
when the kid watching on the news report, it was almost like, oh no,
yeah. And then you get the bit when like the doors close, and it's just
just as it's kicking off,
you're just
the bunker,
oh for God, you're just like
you're being teased.
Yeah, it's almost too much. It's almost too much, isn't it?
But good God, man, do they give him some fucking brilliant moments later on? Like, he full on pulls off a fatality on one of those characters.
It is literally a fatality. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean, when his tail first starts to light up, when that sound kicks in, you know, the one, the deep bassy kind of wow, and it starts to light up its back, and you're like, what's this?
Yeah, it's so good.
And
you know what it is.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah, the atomic breath is something that's been there since the early days, but they really managed to do it well in this. Yeah,
it looks fantastic. It looks absolutely fantastic. I'd say I'm actually, I really love the Alexander Desplat soundtrack, because he's an odd choice, considering the kind of films he tends to score. And they didn't actually use the original Toho 1954 Godzilla theme, which is often used in the films nowadays. But I really like his soundtrack. It sort of brings, again, a sense of majesty to the film. I always love that moment when, like, obviously after fighting with the Mutos, Godzilla's on the floor and he sort of wakes up and sort of like half asleep, like he's stoned, just sort of wanders back into the sea. And the music just gives it a real sense of potency and majesty. As I said, when he roars and the horns kick in and stuff, it's like, it's really, really cool. It's really, really cool. It's really, really cool. Yes, I just have to say, like, I love how smart this film is in the way that it combines Godzilla's two sides, because you've got a dark and serious film that is kind of about the dangers of nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, because the creatures themselves, the Mutos, they breed on it, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that the danger they bring, obviously, is what sort of leads to Bryan Cranston's wife dying in the prologue, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you sort of have that it's not as potent as the allegory in like 54, but it's there. But at the same time, Godzilla's not the villain in this film as well. He is a hero, but he's not the hero because they go with this idea that Godzilla's not some like mutated monster. They go with this idea that he's a force of nature, the balancer, so to speak. You know that concept that like when humanity becomes too numerous and Mother Nature brings out a disease, a new disease, a culling, and like Godzilla's kind of like that when at this point, before they start going with the idea of all the Titans, he's like a force of nature to quell,
like an earthquake or a typhoon or something.
Yeah, and I love that sort of parallels with how they sort of portray him in Shin Godzilla. But I really like that. It was a new take, and it meant that they managed to sort of capture both sides of the character from the previous eras all in one package. It's honestly, I really think if Cranston was all the way through this film, it might have been a 10 out of 10 for me. I loved it so much. It would have been up there. Oh, I don't know. It's definitely in my top 5 Godzilla movies. Definitely, it might. If Cranston had been kept all the way through it, it might have been in my top,
or two. Yeah,
my top 3. It might have been in my top 3. So yeah, that's good. That's Godzilla 2014. So onto another film, actually, Mark, that I actually really, really like, and that's Kong Skull Island from 2017.
Oh, I fucking love this movie, man.
Yeah.
It breaks the rules that we've established with regards to Godzilla as well.
Yeah, how so?
Because Godzilla, in all of these movies, we've had that Godzilla, they've teased you with him. They've kind of shown you glimmers here and there, but this movie does none of that shit.
Yeah.
They give you Kong front and center right from the start, and it's fucking glorious. And that's way in which it opens with that smash cut of the 2 Vietnam soldiers just crashing down on that beach. And you have no idea what's going on other than these 2 are enemies, and you're not even sure, like, how does Kong factor into this? And it just, the way in which it builds with the 2 of them trying to kill each other, building up to the reveal. I just love the intro to this movie. It's just brilliant.
This film has got a lot of great imagery in general. Like, I wouldn't say it's as well shot as Godzilla 2014.
No.
But it's got lots of its own really interesting ideas that look really good on screen.
Yeah. And it's got John C. Reilly. Enough.
Well, the cast is fantastic, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Brie Larson, but she's fine.
She's strong in this, man. And Tom Hiddleston. And
he's fine.
Gary Sinise. Yeah.
Gary Sinise?
Yeah.
Is Gary Sinise in this? Well, fair enough.
Bear me a second. I swear that was Gary Sinise in that. Give me a second. I'm gonna double check this. I am wrong, apparently.
Indeed, you are. Anyway,
more important, got slapped into a cliff.
We'll talk about that in a second because that's great. I was just gonna say, fucking John, fucking the man Goodman is in this movie, and it's always good value for money to see him in a movie.
Yeah,
always. So, he's a
fantastic actor as well,
and obviously John C. Reilly.
As you say, they've got a significant cast on this. This is the best cast out of the Monsterverse. Series.
Agreed.
Of accumulated different talent.
Let's be honest, Bryan Cranston sort of overtakes all of these combined. I'm going to be honest. He does. Even Samuel L. Jackson can't compare to the amazing awesomeness that is Bryan Cranston. I'm sorry. John C. Reilly, you mentioned. He's the MVP of this movie.
Absolutely, man. From the start, when he turns up in as himself, I mean, not talking about the flashback at the beginning, which in and of itself sets the tone for what's going on here. But from the moment he appears on screen in this movie, he is just a joy to watch.
Yeah.
Because he seems to be the only man who really truly gets how serious shit is here. And like, he gets the impression that these military guys just are not taking this serious enough.
He's lived it, man. He's lived it.
Yeah. And you can tell that he understands who Kong is, and he understands the ecosystem, and he's a guy that survived in this land for decades. And he's just desperately trying to tell them to, like, you're not all going home. Like, it's as simple as that. It's the way this world is. Like, this land, it will kill you. And at first, they don't take him seriously because they see him as a crazy vet that's just been living alone for too long. But
so that is like the archetype, isn't it?
But he's just entertaining to watch. He's got the right level of comedy.
Yeah.
And as you say, his arc. the whole aspect of him, all he wants to do is just go home, have a beer, eat a hot dog, go watch the ball game.
You can sympathise with that. It's relatable.
Yeah, he doesn't ask for too much out of life, but it's something that most people take for granted, and he's become obsessed with that concept, and that's all he wants, and you can respect that.
I do love the Vietnam setting as well. I love the flavour it gives the film and the soundtrack and the music. It's always good to period something. But talking about Kong himself, this is awesome. His design is fantastic. I love the fact that they are paying tribute to King Kong's original design in the original black and white movie. You know, I remember King Kong being like my brother's favourite character for a while. So it was like a film that I watched a lot as a kid. And I do have like a personal affinity for the character as well. There was like the 70s film reboot with Linda Hamilton. I remember vaguely seeing as a kid. And then there's another one where they like replace King Kong's heart with a robot heart or something, which I remember seeing as a kid. But like the story of Kong has always been one that I've loved. Even Peter Jackson's film I enjoy. But I am glad they didn't just make King Kong a gorilla in this, you know. And he actually like stands on his hind feet and looks like the original character, you know. I'd say overall this film is just it's more balanced than Godzilla 2014.
Yeah, it's entertaining as all hell. It's got a nice mixture of other monsters into it as well as it shows in the ecosystems.
Yeah, love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
the array of creatures in it on Skull Island.
That bamboo spider is fucking terrifying.
It's so cool. That's so cool. But I was just going to say, I think 2014 Godzilla has higher highs.
Yeah.
Overall, but is
more constant, sort of like
more consistent. I love the fact it's gory as well.
Oh,
it's very gory. Yeah.
And there are a couple of moments of death which are just like, I felt that.
I wanted to save it, but it's also funny, such as the soldier who tries to sacrifice himself. Gary Sinise in all but name.
Yeah, his name's Shea Wiggum, apparently, according to Google. And I defy you to Google his name and just tell me how much he does look like Gary Sinise to me. I swear to God, I thought that was Gary Sinise.
He's Gary Sinise in name only. He's Gino.
Yeah.
He is Gino.
But nonetheless, that sequence where he
just so funny.
The epic pulling of the twin pins out the grenades and walking towards the skull kicker or whatever it is, and you know that it's like, this could be badass, and it goes from badass to just outright fucking hilarious in seconds.
It's the way that he gets twatted, isn't it? And then just sort of like splats on the cliff face and it explodes, and it's just like, not only did you kill that man in the most horrific manner, you took away his moment of glory. Yeah. You know, like that is, I don't want to go that way, man. I don't want to go. Please don't ever let me go that way. If I'm ever going to sacrifice myself, let it be a true sacrifice. So.
Yeah. But the actual fight sequence in this is as well, like when you see Kong using weapons.
Love that. Love the fact he uses weapons. They give him his own identity, and obviously he's a primate, so like tools and things. It's fantastic.
Well, he started with stripping trees down so he could twat people with them. It's just brilliant. Like,
I love that. I love how he runs his hand down up the trunk, doesn't he? To
turn it to a baseball bat. So
it's so good.
And then when he evolves up to the likes of chains with propellers on the ends of them, and it's got some savage moments in this, in the way in which he dispatches some of these creatures.
It's absolutely fucking ridiculous, but it's just fun. The film knows it's almost like a Hallmark story, a harking back to like horror comedies almost of the 80s and early 90s, where like the action
visceral, you almost can't.
It's over the top and visceral, and the film knows it's preposterous as well, and isn't like, it hasn't got lofty ambitions. It's just looking to be really fun. You know, so absolutely love it.
And when it pulls into the ending, it gives you exactly what you want for John C. Reilly.
Yeah,
That I'm not going to lie. That when I saw that sequence where he finally gets home and he sees his son and his wife, and everything about that, I actually put a lump in my throat.
It's really good. He's a great actor. He's a great actor.
Yeah, because you can see the utter joy on his face just to be back, and then when he gets to sit down and have his beer and hot dog and watch the ball game, and I don't know, that really got me in the right place. That was just like, it was a simple little touch, and it really added something for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so before we go into the last couple of movies, I reckon we should take a quick break just to break up the episode a little bit, and we'll be right back in a second. Welcome back to the podcast. So, next section, we're going to carry on with the Monsterverse. And the next film is 2019's King of the Monsters. So, Mark, what do you think of this one?
Oh, man, and this one is fucking on. Like, they really bought, like, they saw what worked in the previous one, and they went, you know what? More monsters, more fighting. Let's go. And having watched, this was the movie that I also watched today. I didn't have, like, I realised that I didn't really take in this movie much the last time I watched it when it first came out. I didn't pay as much attention as maybe I should, but I actually really enjoyed this movie.
Did you? Okay.
I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, it's not too deep. It's not going to have the same depth as Godzilla, like 2014. But it's bringing more. It's got more kaiju, and it's got more monsters fighting. And to be honest... whilst the human interest is never going to be strong in these movies unless with notable exceptions.
Of course.
The element that you turn up for in these movies is to see Godzilla beat the shit out of people. And not just Godzilla, you see a couple of really good fights in this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. Although, it is a little bit... like, I mean, the human interest side of this with regards to the main three, which would be that family, the mother... the husband and the Millie Bobby Brown. Yeah.
It is awful.
Yeah, that
it is awful. Millie Bobby Brown is an actress of great charisma, even at her youngest. Even before she became well known in this and with
Stranger Things.
You know, she is like clearly a star.
She's
no matter
very,
how you
very
look
talented.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she is good in this film, but. And Ken Watanabe, you know, is good as well in anything. Yeah. And like Charles Dance is good in everything. But what was the point of that anyway? Fine.
What pissed me off is they had Charles Dance in this movie, and inside an hour he got relegated to second in command of the bad guy. You don't do that to Dance. He is strong enough to carry that all by himself. You don't need to complicate this story anymore. No. I don't know. That part did get me a little bit.
Yeah. For me, the biggest problem was the character that Vera Farmiga plays. Is Carl Chandler's ex-wife.
Yeah,
I hated her. Completely.
I didn't have the motivations really. Like, you know, like, she kind of she tried to justify. Oh, we have to do this, otherwise the world is going to be like a burnt cinder in 10 years. And
it's going to be a burnt cinder by the time Godzilla's fucking finished with it, anyways.
At that point, I was just kind of like, you know what? If this is the excuse you want just to get them all fucking fighting, okay, fine. Let's just skip to the next part.
It's bollocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. Really, really bad. And I haven't really seen her in many films, so I don't know. I'm not going to criticize her acting. Just hated the character. And because I didn't like the character, the drama around the family unit was completely unbelievable. And I didn't care. And I literally... fell asleep any time they were on screen. It was awful. The human story in this film is 90% awful. And it's a big problem for me. Another narrative flaw in this film is Ken Watanabe. So I mentioned earlier on, again, that I really love it when there's a human-Godzilla interaction. And this
you're talking about the sacrifice.
Yes, this is what I'm about to say to you. Like when Ken Watanabe sacrifices himself in this film to repower Godzilla, it's actually really well done and quite potent. And so well done and so potent and so powerful that when Vera Farmiga's character sacrifices herself at the end, I don't care. I'm just like, just fucking die. I don't care. This is bollocks. Yeah. I hated you. Yeah. I wish you were... I almost wish this was a film not about them, and it was about... You've got this great actor in Ken Watanabe. Is it because his English accent is not great and he talks in that Japanese, pronunciation? I don't know what it is.
As I say, if this had been Watanabe versus Charles Dance, That would have been
a lot better. It would have been better.
Yeah.
It would have been a lot better.
Remove that entire family unit. I mean, maybe Billy Boy Brown could be his assistant or something. But absolutely. Those two are such strong actors in and of themselves that they feel like they're pushed to the sidelines by this weird...
The best actors on paper are not in the film enough. It's the same problem with 2014 Godzilla. Like, Kong Skull Island got this right because the actors are front and center. You know, and there's loads of them who are all really good and bring it, and charismatic. So, real shame about that. Yeah, this is a weird film for me, Mark, because I saw it at the cinema as well. I was looking forward to it because we all knew that King Ghidorah was going to be in it, and King Ghidorah is obviously Godzilla's most famous adversary. On paper, this film should be a massive success, but it kind of falters for me because of the human characters being so fucking awful. I almost found the fact that there's so much monster action in it, it's almost overwhelming, and I felt like the film was too long. I was tired by the end of it. Really, really tired. 2 hours, 12 minutes. That is too long. Too long. Too long for a film that's just mindless monster mashing. And don't get me wrong, there is lots of good fight sequences in it, but it was almost too much for me. Yeah. I feel like the film was a bit unbalanced.
I could agree with that.
However, Godzilla walking around with loads of mini explosions coming out of him.
Oh, burning Godzilla. Yeah, that was fucking badass.
It was fucking hilarious. It was absolutely mad.
And when he pulls out that new move of the atomic shockwave, that just looks badass as well. I mean, he literally goes Super Saiyan.
Literally. I don't know what it is, though. I just love that image of him just walking, going...
You're so fucking dead, mate.
It's literally like he's like a walking subwoofer, and it's like a bass line just going boom, 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 boom. It just... Like, he's raving, and it just looks so silly and so mad. I loved it. But obviously, the amount of monsters in this film is the most noticeable aspect in this film. So let's run this down very quickly. So what did you think of Ghidorah? Or Ghidorah, however you pronounce it?
Yeah, it's a nice design. He looked cool. So the whole triple head thing. I read about the fact that they actually, to a degree, gave all three of the heads different personalities. And
3 different mocap actors, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A mocap actor for each head.
They named them differently because there was Ichi, which is 1 in Japanese. There's Ni, which is 2 in Japanese, and the third one should have been Son, but they decided to name him Kevin because he was named after Kevin from The Office in the American Office.
Yes,
because he's the one that's a little bit slower than the other 2.
Yes.
And once I had that, I saw that review earlier on. Then I watched the movie, and I was like, "Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. It's really cool.
It's a cool couple of sort of touches.
It's a cool feature. I felt like Ghidorah was slowly overwhelmingly fucking magnificent. He is the most famous Godzilla villain, really, and he just
they paid him reverence. They really did make him.
It took 2 hours and 12 minutes to fucking kill him. It took a long time for Godzilla to finally win. He got the shit kicked out of him in this film. He was killed. It took a human being sacrificing himself by detonating a fucking nuclear bomb at the center of the Earth. To bring him back. So, Ghidorah was very well represented. I loved Rodan. Wasn't in it so much, but, the design was cool.
He had cool moments, like when he took on the jets and he just, the barrel roll and the way he slapped them all down. He's got a certain, sinister Starscream quality to him.
Yes. And, but Mothra had a great showing, in my opinion. Looked really good. Love the references to the Mothra theme from the films as well in the soundtrack. Looked beautifully animated. But... this film had a weird darkness to its tone. I just remember thinking it's quite an ugly looking film as well. The CGI looks good, but I don't know. Godzilla 2014 was quite dark, and I always kind of got the impression it was because they didn't want to film them in broad daylight because it would look too fake. And I got the impression they took that too far in this film by making everything blue. But
one other thing that I kind of thought was a bit strange to this movie, which I was actually kind of into once the credits finally rolled, is there is actually a really weird cover version of Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla, sung by Serge Tankian.
Oh yeah.
And there's something about that chanting, like kind of they used it throughout the movie of just sort of like the chanting, sort of like almost like it sounds like worship every time Godzilla's getting his groove on and just getting ready to sort of like stomp someone in. It's just I don't know. I liked it. It was by no means the tone that you get from the 2014 one, but still.
I'm in two minds about it, right? Because like Ben McCreary is the guy who did the soundtrack, and that's how you say his name. And he this is the first time they used the original Japanese Godzilla movie theme, and he sort of remixed it with Skyrim chanting, and it sounded like it was done on a computer, and I didn't think it sounded very good. The original Godzilla theme is so fucking good. It is one of the best movie themes ever produced, bar none. I will go into great detail about why it's so good when we talk about Minus One later in the episode, but like it is incredible. And adding to it with chanting doesn't work. It kind of ruined it for me. I'm like, you're overcomplicating something that is simple and elegant and stunning and doesn't need changing. But I was glad that it at least was utilized in it. So
it paid respect in some fashion, I guess. So
kind of, yeah. So I don't know. It's a funny film for me. On paper, like I say, I should love it. Yeah. And I was really, really excited to see it when I saw it at the cinema, but I came out just like tired and in a bit of a sweat. You know, like it's just I was like,
bit of an ordeal.
I feel like I've just been fighting with Godzilla for 2 hours and 12 minutes. You know, like a bit much. So I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen it. And the reason for that is because I kind of can't bear the thought of sitting through it again because of it. I do need to rewatch it, though, and give it another go. So maybe, like with 2014, my expectations being a bit more tempered, I might enjoy it more. But there's that problem with the human characters and the waste of good actors that are in it. That concerns me. So, do you have anything else to say about this movie?
No, I think we've done it, man.
Okay, then. So, two more films, I suppose, technically speaking. The next one is Godzilla vs. Kong, which came out in 2021. So, what did you think of this film, Mark?
I also like this movie.
I like this film. This was more in line with Skull Island.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yeah,
very silly.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you have to just go. I mean, they've laid the groundwork. This isn't like just smashing two franchises together. This is like, okay, we've put the work in. We've established both these characters quite thoroughly in their own origin movies now. Let's have some fun with them.
I have issues. I do. Yeah. Do have nitpicks.
Yeah, but for a movie that is essentially all about finding different ways in which to get Godzilla and King Kong fighting, there's certain suspensions that you can give a movie like this.
In the end, yeah, if you're coming to see this movie to watch Godzilla and King Kong fight, it's a very satisfying movie.
Yes, and it's because they don't just fight once. Like this isn't just
multiple times.
This ain't Batman versus Superman. They actually fucking deliver multiple times with multiple like fights against each other with clear winners and also without jobbing out the other guy.
That's right. They do the clever thing, don't they? Whereas Godzilla, technically speaking, wins the fight against King Kong, because I don't know, if you were to say to me who would win between King Kong and Godzilla, I kind of would say Godzilla.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I love King Kong. I love them both quite equally, really. I'm not really a fan of one more than the other. But
Godzilla's got the more raw power because of the...
He breathes nuclear fucking fission.
Yeah.
You know,
but Kong has still got that edge in terms of his weapon usage and the like.
Well, that's right. I love the fact that is what gives him the edge in the fights that they do have, and you know, they have their like advantages in certain situations. But one thing I love is that obviously Kong and Godzilla, when they fight, you know, Godzilla comes out on top eventually. And then we have the appearance of Mechagodzilla, which is a really convoluted mess of an origin story, but it's Ghidorah, isn't it? It's Ghidorah's head, which we forgot to mention was absolutely brilliant in the last film when Godzilla swings his head around after before eating it.
Oh no, he breathes through he grabs it by the end, breathes fire through the throat, and their head explodes.
Oh, it's so brilliant.
In terms of definitely, because the head's still alive at that point as well.
Yeah.
It is properly like, holy shit, he fucking ended him.
So... I mean, if that was a fatality in 2014, what the fuck was that? I don't know, mate. But I like how like Mechagodzilla was written into this film. It made sense that Mechagodzilla really wanted to kill Godzilla because it was almost like Ghidorah's spirit had embodied the form of Mechagodzilla and hated Godzilla and wanted to kill Godzilla. What did you think of the design of Mechagodzilla?
I liked it as well. I mean, it's a very sort of like, I mean,
if they had a fucking giant robot that would, it would look stupid. They couldn't replicate the
rubber suits. They actually did a very good job of giving something that, for the suspension of disbelief, you can go, you know what, that's probably fine. It was, if we're going to carry on the Superman Batman analogy, this is the Doomsday showing up, and he was a lot better than Doomsday.
Yes.
So, and as I say, you've had the characters fight, was it 3 times by this point?
Yes.
And now it's done. They've established who is clearly the winner at this point.
Well, I don't know. That's the thing. That's the thing, though, right? Because this is the smart thing: is that Godzilla does, technically speaking, beat King Kong, but they have to team up at the end, don't they?
And that's
Godzilla,
what brings it all together. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's Kong's ability to use weapons that gives them the edge over Mechagodzilla, because raw power just can't beat it because it is like a mechanical machine, you know. And there's lots of really great moments in this fight. In these fight sequences, it's really well choreographed, isn't it? Really well thought out.
The creatures move a lot faster in these movies.
Yeah.
I mean, when you got Kong pretty much almost launching like an Olympic gymnast, La Volta.
As he should do, really.
And then you've got Godzilla's been getting progressively faster through the Monsterverse in terms of how fast he can move. At first, he was very slow and lumbering. At this point, he can scamper.
Yeah, they had to speed him up, didn't they, so he can keep up with Kong, I think.
And this Kong is a lot larger than the Kong we got in Skull Island, because that was a prepubescent Kong back then. And
I love his beard.
He has got an old man quality.
I love his old man beard, man.
Yeah,
I really dug that. But it's not all like fun though in this film, Mark, because the fucking human story is arse. It is total arse.
Yeah, we've got Millie Bobby Brown back and
the dad. It's just
we just don't care.
No.
Yeah. I mean, there's a point when you turn around and go, you know what? I mean, I tune out at this point for these sequences, because I get you need something to glue the story together, but this ain't it.
Why not just hire some really good actors and write a good narrative like they almost did with 2014?
Well, they got the first part right in terms of hiring the actors. They just forgot to write the good narrative.
Like I said, Godzilla Minus One, mate. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. That's all I'm going to say. All right, you need to watch that bloody film before we record the second part of this podcast. But yeah, in the end, this film, I didn't see it at the cinema, unfortunately. It came out during the pandemic, and I kind of upset I didn't, but I really enjoyed it. You know, I took it for what it is, and it is what it is. It was fun. You know, I hated at least half of it, but I loved, you know, the other half. So we've got the up and coming Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire, in a few weeks, as of today, 7th of the 3rd. How are you feeling about this new film, Mark? Any expectations? Any thoughts?
Well, it looks like they're expanding the universe now, even more so than what they've done before, because in previous movies they've been alluding to this Hollow Earth theory, with the concept of a lot of these monsters actually originate from within the planet in a different ecosystem that allows this much larger creatures to evolve. And I'm curious. I don't know how much further we can go with this before we start getting some more sort of like some more cheesy elements come in. I mean,
oh mate, this film looks like absolute bollocks. Let's be honest, it looks so cheesy and so silly.
Yeah, the thing is, it's just, I'm still going to give it a chance, because I did like Kong versus Godzilla, but they can't really have them fight again. It's done. There's a line that's been drawn under that. So what else can you do? Bring in another monkey? I'll check it out, but they're going to have to pull something interesting out the hat they've been holding back from the trailers for me to be genuinely like, yeah, this is a good movie, because what's been shown on screen so far has been a case of, okay, well, you're getting them team up again, but we saw that at the end of the last one.
Yeah, I am kind of with you. My expectations of this movie have sort of been up and down. The original trailers, which showed an evil monkey, made me go, oh my God. Like really?
Are we doing this? Okay.
I was like, oh, that doesn't sound good because I know that there's
they
this
beat
like
up fucking a robotic Godzilla last time. So are we just doing the gorilla version of this now?
Well, there is this whole like law, isn't there, in this universe where there's like an entire race of monkeys that lost a fight to a large race of Godzillas, and it's very silly. It's very stupid.
It's making this sound like Godzilla and King Kong are like the Romeo and Juliet sort of this
it's very silly. It's very, very silly. But
yeah.
Then I saw Godzilla turning pink, and then I saw King Kong with a robotic arm, and I saw them sort of like Godzilla. There's that scene where Godzilla sort of rises out of the ground, and they run at the camera like Batman and Robin. And I just went, I'm ready. I'll tell you why. Because I had already seen Godzilla Minus One by this point. You know, like as I mentioned earlier, my favourite of the Godzilla films are always the dark and serious ones, and the silly ones as well. But the thing is that there's that balance. I have the dark and serious ones, and therefore I can allow myself to watch the silly ones. I don't want to like raise your expectations of Godzilla Minus One, but I saw Godzilla Minus One at the cinema. And that is nearly the best Godzilla film ever made. And for my money, it's probably the most perfect Godzilla film ever made. And because I've had that movie, I'm kind of okay with the silly ones again. So, Pink Godzilla, which apparently is a reference to nuclear fission, right? Because that's the colour it goes when it goes at its most potent. I think I read somewhere. Have you heard that?
No, I didn't know about this.
It's not to make him look stupid. It's apparently a reference to his power level becoming extremely high.
Well, if we're taking the Super Saiyan route, there is a Super Saiyan route where Goku's hair turns pink. So yeah. It
makes sense, right? It makes sense. And then you've got King Kong with his giant arm and whatever metallic arm and stuff. Like this is going the whole way, and you know what? I'm kind of okay with that. So
the thing is, if you're going to go silly, you've got to turn it up to 11. You have to go all the way. You can't half-ass it. And the thing is, I need a better villain than Evil Monkey.
Do you know anything else about the story?
None at all.
Right.
Bro,
I'm not going to say this to you to spoil it. I'm going to give you a teeny tiny little bit of information about this movie that I do know.
What's this?
There is another villain, and it is from what I can tell, it is original, but I don't know how important it is to the story. All I know is that it is big. So,
okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So, what I'm saying to you is that
keep the faith.
Keep the faith. It seems like they are going to just they're not going to turn it up to 11. They're just going to fucking take the knobs off, take the limiters off, and just fucking fire it as far as they can.
It's Godzilla versus King Kong. Like,
well, it's not. It's Godzilla X Kong.
Yeah, it's two bros going out on a buddy cop adventure.
Yeah.
You just don't. So you don't do this half-assed, and you don't do it like measured. I mean, when you've got the two of those, you have to take it large. You have to go big or go home. And I'm kind of hoping that they can pull it off. I mean, this Monsterverse franchise has been unexpectedly quite successful.
It has, that's right. They didn't expect to even make this movie, did they? The Godzilla vs. Kong originally was a make-or-break movie because the films made money until King of the Monsters 2019, and then they carried on with Godzilla vs. Kong, and that actually turned out to be an unparalleled success. It was massive.
Yeah. I kind of get the impression the studio is kind of doing this out of some sort of reverence to the past because of the likes of Godzilla and King Kong are titans of classic cinema, and it's just the way of paying respect to it. And suddenly they're seeing this shit's getting big again, and they're like, "Shit!" I mean, I even heard the director was even saying like he had no plans past Godzilla versus King Kong because he wanted to wait for the reception of the audience first before he decided what to do next. And the fact that movie was, for the most part, acclaimed, and that's why he's carried on with it. And I'd like that. I like that he hasn't made this with the intent of like, okay, so we've got a trilogy in mind or anything like that. He is actually making these movies purely on the basis of the reception of the audience.
Yeah.
Because movies like this are not going to be. They're not going to be detailed in their storyline. They're not going to be overly dramatic. They're not going to be Citizen Kane. they shouldn't outstay their welcome, because these are franchises that have existed long before the current version of them, and you don't want somebody to run them into the ground like they did in the 70s, or run them along in the ground on their tail.
As I said, man, I'm not like expecting fucking Citizen Kane, but I'm really hoping that this film is just a load of silly fun. So I'm hopefully going to go and see it at the cinema when it comes out, and I'm gonna give it a go. So.
Fact is, just go with the right mindset. I'm here to have some fun and maybe see some giant monsters beat the shit out of some other giant monsters. And
I say it does seem like they've not revealed everything in the trailers. There's been hints, and that's it. So I'm hopefully I'm hopefully going to be surprised. So that was the Monsterverse. So we're going to take a break now, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the other two, the last two Japanese Godzilla movies. So be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. So for the remainder of this episode, we're going to discuss the most recent of the Japanese Godzilla movies, namely Shin Godzilla, and of course the most recent, Godzilla Minus One. So let's start with Shin Godzilla. So, to give you a brief outline, Shin Godzilla was the 2016 reboot. Did you know, Marc, that it was written and directed by Hideaki Ono, the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion?
Explain some things now. Now that you put that perspective on it, I see. Because it's the guy who likes to analyze shit and break it down and deconstruct.
It has, just having his name, I believe he co-wrote it actually, but just having his name attached has implication, doesn't it?
Well, he gave this character dimensions that I wouldn't even have considered in Shin.
Well, let's say we'll discuss Godzilla himself. I assume we're talking about Godzilla in depth very shortly. Very shortly.
What other character is in this movie?
Good point. Good point. But so another point to make as well is that the composer is Shiro Sagasu, who is also Hideaki Anno's like regular composer who did the music for Neon Genesis Evangelion. So I'll be coming back to that very soon. So to give you a quick rundown of the plot, long story short, a creature that doesn't look like Godzilla leaves a path of destruction through the Kamata district of Tokyo. It evolves, overheats, and returns to the sea. Goro Maki, a disgraced anti-nuclear zoology professor, predicted the appearance of the creature. He disappears, leaving his research notes jumbled in a code on a yacht before disappearing. The creature is named Godzilla after Maki's research, and it proves impervious and kills the Japanese Prime Minister effectively. And his fellow suit with his atomic breath and rays. It is discovered that Godzilla's plates and blood work as a cooling system like the rods in a nuclear reactor, and they figure out a way to freeze Godzilla. They also discover over the course of the film that Godzilla is evolving and is able to reproduce asexually. The UN threatens with a thermonuclear weapon if the Japanese cannot stop Godzilla, so there becomes
your shit in gear, Japan. Come on.
There becomes a race against time to use this less destructive method to stop Godzilla. So they freeze Godzilla. The day is won, but it's also discovered that on Godzilla's tail are strange humanoid creatures emerging, suggesting that he was about to give birth. Now, this
one took me a Google to actually establish.
We'll get
an image. So.
That's Hideaki Anno, isn't it, for you? He's very good at suggesting things. He doesn't like to give you everything. He wants you to think about it. He wants you to look into it. He wants the film to resonate with you for a period after, and that is what this film is very, very good at. It's very, very good at getting under your skin, I think.
Yeah.
But I was just about to say, like, this summary may seem really, really short, and that's because there's a lot of time spent in boardrooms.
Which sounds boring, but to be honest, there is a certain charm. There is something to be said for watching the bureaucracy at work trying to deal with the unknowable. And having these people around a table screaming and shouting and trying to establish kind of fighting with each other and trying to just understand this force of nature that has decided to just wreak havoc.
Do you know what real-world events inspired this movie, Mark?
I imagine Chernobyl?
No.
Ah, fair enough.
So I will tell you, because I have the notes. So this was inspired by the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami from 2011, which led to the Fukushima nuclear disaster. I've got some information for you. So on March the 11th at 2:45, roughly, an undersea mega thrust earthquake occurred in the Pacific Ocean, 72 kilometers east of the Oshika Peninsula of the Tohoku region, which then caused a tsunami. This is sometimes known as the Great East Japanese Earthquake and was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan and the fourth ever recorded in the world. So I've got some numbers for you. 19,000 deaths, 6,000 injured, 2,500 missing. It was. I remember when it happened. Do you remember when it happened?
Yeah.
It was, a terrible, terrible thing, obviously. Terrible.
Absolutely, yeah. And those numbers are almost incomprehensible in terms of a force of nature.
Absolutely.
Like carnage.
But then, supposedly, the earthquake itself caused an electrical grid failure that damaged power plants and the backup energy resources, resulting in a containment issue at the nuclear power plant, which resulted in radioactive contaminants being leaked into the nearby environment. It was actually rated like a 7 out of 7 on the danger scale. Apparently, though, no deaths or long-term, health effects were reported.
I did read stories about how during that time afterwards, during the clear-up, there were scores of old people, like 50s, 60s, 70s, volunteering to go in and help with the clear-up.
Yeah. Because
of the radiation and saying, no, we've lived our lives. That we don't want people that are in their mid, like 30s and 40s doing this and ruining what's left. And that is a sacrifice that actually really got me a little bit when I read that.
Yeah. Incredible. Human will, mate. The strength of the human will, which is, especially regarding the Japanese anyway, the strength of the Japanese public will, let's say, is often an important theme in the core Godzilla franchise. So important thematically to all of these films, and I include like 54 Godzilla, Return of Godzilla from 84, this film, and Minus One. It's all about the survival instinct, the will to live, and so I just it's quite obvious, really, as we just mentioned briefly about the boardroom, that this film really is a satire of the suits and the men in power who were absolutely useless during these disasters, and part of the reason why there were so many deaths, just like with Chernobyl, is because of the inactivity, the inability,
the fear of making a choice.
Yes. I can't remember the name of the actor. I should have probably brought the notes up, but the fellow who plays like the Prime Minister in this film is like actually hilariously awful because he's so indecisive and so shocked by everything. He's
waiting for someone to tell him the right thing to do. Because no one has ever dealt with anything like this before, everyone is paralyzed with fear. All they can do is just watch as Godzilla just goes on his merry way. And there are times when he looks pretty fucking merry, when he's just smashing his way through those buildings. And it's just...
that actually kind of that what's really smart about this film is that whole sequence when we'll talk about the Godzilla form in a second, but I'm just going to go on that through line that you're bringing up now. The second form that you see of Godzilla, technically speaking, is when he comes ashore and he's like scurrying through the land, and as he's doing it, he's scurrying across the river, isn't he? He's bringing like a tsunami of like boats and debris with him, and it's like intentionally shot and filmed to be that way, to sort of represent the tsunami. I think, did you notice this, Mark, that one of the most effective things in this film actually is that how a lot of the shots of people are shot with like hand cam to make it realistic.
No, they give it on the ground feel. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a lot of things. Like those videos got posted on YouTube in the aftermath of the actual tsunami, and
Correct.
it does call up memories of that sort of thing.
Yes, intentionally done. It's very intentionally done. Very intentionally done. So I've got a little quote for you here. This is a guy it's called William Suitsui. Is that how you say his name? I got it to Wikipedia, but he says, Shin Godzilla leaves no doubt that the greatest threat to Japan comes not from within, but from not from without, but from within, from a geriatric, fossilized government bureaucracy unable to act decisively or stand up resolutely to foreign pressure. Yeah. Which pretty much, sums it up.
There's a point when they got him in his second form where you wonder, could they have taken him down? But they're still, they're questioning the human casualties because of and you do have to, they are weighing up human life at this point.
Yes.
But at the same time, you do have to question, if they'd chosen to make that sacrifice, would it have been better in the long run?
The thing is, though, every single decision that's made. What about the sequence at the beginning where they end up changing briefing rooms multiple times for what?
Yeah, just they got printers and fax machines and laptops all set up.
I actually when I rewatched this film today, and I actually watched it dubbed, which I didn't originally. I intentionally watched it dubbed because I do kind of appreciate Hideki Anno's visual style.
For me,
okay. Well, what this enabled me to do was to sort of appreciate the cinematography of the film. And while Hideki Anno does have his visual style intact, a lot of the quick cuts and the close shots of the people talking, especially in the offices, it kind of makes them look like caricatures, which I think is very intentional, very intentional.
Oh, when you got some of the more sort of interesting sort of radicals talking and ridiculing each other and stuff like that.
All of them. What about the sequence when the prime minister is talking to his cabinet, and basically you get a semi-wide shot of him at his desk or close-up shot of his face, and then it quickly cuts to close-ups of the people talking to him. It's kind of a suffocating series of events. You feel these faces are attacking him one by one. Yeah. They're saying, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. However, of course, the decision is yours, Prime Minister. Do you know what I mean? I actually think that these sequences are actually quite funny.
Yeah.
There's definitely a biting satire at work here. These characters are often portrayed as fools.
Because they're it's almost like the character's thinking about the next election year whilst at the same time.
Well, it's brought up, isn't it? Multiple times in the film. You could go for prime minister after this, to the main character. Yeah, unfortunately, because there are so many characters,
they kind of blur a little.
They do. The main character and then the American girl, are kind of the ones that stand out the most, but they're not. They are in the end kind of po-faced, self-serious.
Yeah, there's no actual. You couldn't describe their character or personality, really, could you?
No, but it's not really what the film's about either, is it? This film is not really about character. It is about satire in the grand scheme of things, and of course, moving on from that, it's also about the most monstrous depiction of Godzilla there's probably even now ever been.
I will say, you say monstrous, but there was one element that I had a little difficulty with at the beginning. It ironed itself out in later itinerations of his evolution. But that early Godzilla, I think it's the second form, when he's smashing his way through the city after the tsunami and everything.
Yeah.
Those eyes were fucking weird.
The eyes. Yeah, I knew he was going to say the eyes.
Yeah, man. There's something about those eyes was just so kind of he looked so bug-eyed that it was kind of a little bit.
It's weird, isn't it?
It didn't break my suspension or anything like that, but it was a choice.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he does end up evolving to a much more intimidating form. So.
It's weird, isn't it? I've read people say I tried to watch this and I couldn't stand the first design. Someone said I showed this to my girlfriend and on Reddit, and they said and they just said turn it off as soon as that creature came out to sea.
It does look a little bit it doesn't have the look of intent that Godzilla's known for in other itinerations.
No.
This looks much more like what it is. It's at the end of the day, it is the birth spasms of a new creature that has just been thrust upon the earth and is kind of finding its way. That it has no clue. It doesn't really start to show any sort of real intent or intelligence until the evolutions start to kick in more specifically.
Oh, so you think it has intent, do you?
I think it starts to develop intent as its evolutions move along.
Do you? That's interesting. very interesting because, like, as we were saying earlier on about how Hideaki Anno likes to leave some things left unsaid for the viewer to intuit, there is actually some really interesting information out there that discusses Godzilla's origin, because that is obviously the thing that's most interesting about the film. This new version of Godzilla looks the most monstrous we've ever seen. It evolves. It's explained that it was potentially a sea creature that ate toxic waste, or was infected by toxic waste as well. And let's be honest here. Well, up until when this movie was released, anyway, the atomic breath sequence, was it when I saw it a few years ago, my mind was blown.
Well, because the way he deploys that gas first, doesn't he? And then he ignites it, and
it's like he's heating up. If I remember correctly, like the height of nuclear fission is like fire. It goes purple or something. That's something to do with like nuclear.
Oh yeah, and the flame shifts.
Yeah. I read that somewhere. I should have looked back into it before we just started recording this bloody podcast.
It shows the intensity of the flame increasing, and
and then it goes into that heat ray, isn't it? And then you got the heat rays that like fire out. It is like the most, up until this point, the most like dangerous Godzilla has ever been, I think.
Yes. Up to this point is a good emphasis for what comes later.
Yeah. But like, I don't know what it is about this. Well, I do know because I'll tell you. But this version of Godzilla, I always found. Well, I was mentioned earlier, like in the Japanese Godzilla films, there's always a hint of sadness around Godzilla. And did you detect any sort of like hints or notes of sadness within the Godzilla appearance? Let's say, out of interest,
there were moments.
Can you say?
I will be honest. I felt a touch of sympathy when those buildings started coming down on top of him.
It was pretty awesome, to be honest.
Yeah,
with you.
I mean that was a way of like, okay, we've unified all of our military. We're gonna fuck this bastard up, and they went for it. They go, well, the cities are right off now. Let's use what we've got left of it to fucking hurt him.
They go very, very gung ho, don't they? And he's sort of just standing there, isn't it? Like sort of oblivious.
And you can see him kind of like, what are you doing? As the next skyscraper slams into him, and like the way he collapses onto the building is like, keep putting these crates in my mouth, and like the way in which he lies down, and all of that. There were moments. I'm not going to say sympathy, because at the end of the day, they are trying to. It's the same concept of trying to resolve any sort of natural disaster. They're trying to. It's for their survival at the end of the day, but at the same time, this is still a living creature. Mm-hmm. I mean, he hasn't shown any evil. He has purely been just a confused animal up until this point.
Yes. So there's a couple of elements I want to point you towards. First of all, when it's in its second form, when it first comes onto land, the gills are like spraying blood everywhere. I always felt like that look and that the action that it's like spraying blood everywhere. Like it is said in the film, it's struggling to like breathe.
Oh, that's showing like
on land.
A half mutation. It's not fully formed yet. It's still working on.
It's still a sea creature, because that's if we go back to what Godzilla means, it means like gorilla whale, doesn't it? That's the original meaning of the word. And so they stuck with the sea creature concept, didn't they, with this film basically because it comes out of the sea. But like to me, that version of Godzilla always seemed like it was in a lot of pain.
Well, it's going to go and change.
Yes.
Rapid, aggressive changes in relation to its environment, and its environment just radically changed.
It gets out of the sea, but yes.
And as a result, its body's responding to that, and it's changing in ways that it can't even begin to understand, which I imagine were probably painful.
Yes. Like, and that sadness really lent itself to the other forms for some reason as well. I can't really explain it, just that.
Well, it's this trauma that stays with it, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the trauma that I detected, that I carried with me for the rest of the film, which means this is effective filmmaking here, should I say. But like, that note, that second form sort of sets really influenced how I looked at Godzilla through this whole film. When he is defending himself during the atomic breath sequence, like I say, as you said, when he's like spewing fire, first of all, it's almost like he's in pain doing it, the way he's bellowed over, the way his mouth opens, it's like he's choking. And then when it sort of turns into the heat ray and he's firing around and his dorsal fins are like firing around, I kind of detected a sense of desperation in the way he's animated. But there's also something else that's really important, Mark. I don't know if you had. There's a song that plays during that sequence. It's like an operatic song.
Mm-hmm.
And the lyrics actually say a lot because they are intentionally written for this film. The piece of music was composed by Shiro Sagisu, as I say, he is the mainstay of Hideaki Anno's work. Also composed the music to Kasha, the movie, which is a blinding soundtrack.
It's a blinder, man. I love that movie.
Yeah. So during the sequence when he's like spewing the fire and whatever, and the song is happening, there are lyrics. Let me read the lyrics to you. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, do it. Hit me.
It says, these are the lyrics. If I die in this world, who will know something of me? I am lost, no one knows. There's no trace of my yearning. If I die in this world, but I must carry on, who will know something of me? Nothing worse can befall. I am lost, no one knows. All of my fears, all my tears. There's no trace of my yearning. Tell my heart there's a hole. I wear a void, not even hope. A downward slope is all I see. I wear a void, as long as breath comes from my mouth. Not even hope. I may yet stand the slightest chance. A downward slope. A shaft of light is all I need, is all I see to cease the darkness killing me. Those are the words that are sang during the atomic breath sequence.
God damn, man! I think My Chemical Romance needs to up their fucking game, don't they? So...
I don't know about that. I think I might fire you for saying that because I actually think this is incredibly profound.
I'm just making light of what is actually very sort of poignant terms and words going to be applied to a creature like that. Yeah. But I will agree that is actually kind of a little bit heart-wrenching in terms of when you see it from that point of view of the creature that's risen from the darkness and come to the surface the first time into the light and just wants to understand and just wants to survive.
Yes. As I say,
it's a shaft of light and everything, and from a creature that's come from utter darkness, likely.
Of course.
And come into the sunlight, yeah.
Yes, it definitely spins the tone, like I said, like this sad tone. So during this movie, Mark, there is an important character who's never on screen, the Professor Goro Maki. Is that his name? That's right, isn't it? So did you pick anything up about this character specifically?
Not as much, no.
So this is really interesting. So early on in the film, they go onto his yacht, and this is where they find Godzilla's genetic code, okay? And the note that says, do with this as what you will, which is like an important term for the movie overall. And I think it refers to a lot of things, really. It refers to Godzilla, just trying to live, doing as he will, the Japanese government doing as they will, mankind trying to survive, doing as they will. But there's a couple of interesting details in this sequence. First of all, his shoes are on the floor, just on the floor. Like, as if he disappeared out of his shoes, physically. And
actually, that's a classic Japanese trope.
Go on.
When people commit suicide, they take their shoes off.
Yes. And also his glasses are on the side as well. It is insinuated during the movie that he lost his wife to experiments, radiation, and he resented the Japanese government for this. So that's interesting as well. And yeah, he also has information on Godzilla's DNA. And let's say the name Godzilla comes from his notes. It's interesting. And then there's the concept that after Godzilla is, let's say, frozen, there's humans, like human Godzilla hybrids coming out of his tail like he was giving birth, like he was evolving, which suggests the idea that
he's adapting to his enemy.
Yes, that's what they say in the film. But I think it has other implications. I think it's implying there's human DNA in Godzilla in the first place. And I think that it is being implied that Goromaki had something to do with the genesis of this creature, and that maybe
he wasn't so much of an accident.
Yes, and that maybe Godzilla has even been unleashed as a revenge plot because of the fate of his wife. It's very interesting. So
that's an interesting angle, actually. Yeah.
I've always known this after watching it the first time, and when I rewatched it, I was really looking for this information, and then I did a bit of research today, and it turns out that there is an in-law universe book called the Goro Maki Journal, which is written from the perspective of the infamous professor from the character, and it details the creature that became Godzilla, which is a sea creature. So if you, it's on Reddit. If you look for it,
Journal.
If you look into it, it shows the creature, and you can see that it is like a sea creature with like a monster, like a Godzilla style head, but it's got fins, hasn't got arms, etc., etc.,
almost like a Godzilla tadpole sort of thing.
You could that's actually a very, very, very good way to look at it. It's an ancient species. I'm going to read from the article, from what I've read, what I'm reading here. A fish-like creature, and its bizarre anatomy fascinated Goromaki so much that he took it to his lab and experimented on it, and even performed dissections on it when he realized the creature's DNA was constantly changing and in need of evolving further to survive, in which Maki realized he was the final ingredient in the creature's DNA and injected his own DNA into what would later become Godzilla. So,
more of a humanoid form in later items.
Yes, which is why he gets the hind legs. Yes. So that basically confirms. I found this today. So, but basically
that puts a whole different spin on this movie.
Yes. Interesting. I keep saying that. I need to find something else to say. But yes.
Yeah, it's try intriguing.
Yes. As I said, he's always been a master of dangling the plot in front of you, but sort of wisping it away just when you start to understand
let you draw your own conclusions. But if you do find the right thread and yank on it, it can give you so much.
Yes. So, yes. So, can you give me your review of this movie? Just a succinct review of this movie, Mark?
Okay, let's try and paragraph this. Shin Godzilla surprised me because I've been doing a lot of research up until this point with regards to Godzilla in general, and this was a different take on what I'd seen before. This was a much more bureaucratic movie. This was a movie where it analysed the concept of Godzilla as a much more of an unknowable force and a changing force.
Yes.
One that kind of hits you hard. You have no idea. And by the time you've started to cope with what you were dealing with, he's already moved on to a new version of himself. And the shots of the government desperately scrambling to adapt to this. It was an interesting story. And I can see the satire, as you were saying, in terms of the way in which his characters were desperately not only trying to resolve the problem, but trying to appear knowledgeable to each other, trying to show themselves as being like, no, I've got the answer.
Yes.
And those sort of interactions were actually immensely interesting. The strangest thing is, the fact of the matter is that in this movie, I do not distinctly remember characters.
Yes.
I don't remember names. It's hard to explain why. It's just because there were some interesting characters in this story, but they were interesting for the ways in which they interacted with other characters, not for in and of themselves.
Yes, the content, wasn't it? It's the content of the narrative that they sort of serve. This is a film that's more interested in plot than characterization, let's say.
Exactly.
A message.
And the arguments, I mean, there were a couple of points when I straight up went, huh? When they came to explanations. I will be honest, when they started folding the genetic code up of Godzilla into origami shapes and explaining how this is how his molecular system works, I was looking at the screen and going, sure, okay.
Yeah, it's like, this is, I don't know if this is acceptably plausible or not, but fuck it, whatever.
Yeah, no, it certainly looks visually interesting. I mean, we're a hop, skip, and a jump away from Interstellar folding a piece of paper in half and punching a pencil for it, but okay, I'm going to go with it, yeah.
Let me correct you there, Event Horizon, but anyway.
Oh, good point, they did it first, yeah.
Well, I imagine it was probably based on...
Yeah.
whatever, anyway.
But so that kind of concept was like, you know what, fine, okay. It is a timey-wimey, wishy-washy explanation for how they came to the realization of how to deal with Godzilla. And the idea of a coagulant in order to arrest his nuclear fission was an interesting angle on this. Rather than just blowing the holy hell out of him, they actually went for an angle that was a bit different, which is an interesting way in which to dispatch the monster. And also, at the same time, leaving a monolith to the destruction, stood in the center of Tokyo that no one wants to touch because fuck it if we want to wake him up.
Mm-hmm.
Complete with that final warning of his tail showing the humanoid creatures crawling free of his skin. It's
harrowing image, isn't it? It's a harrowing image.
This was a movie I wasn't prepared for. I mean, I wasn't prepared for either of these movies.
But
this was a movie that was a very different tone to what I'd seen in the lead up to this. This was no Godzilla 2014. This was no Godzilla King of Monsters, where Godzilla's fighting for us and hopefully he'll be able to defeat them all so that humanity can survive. This was just a petrified, terrified creature just thrashing around on dry land, trying to survive. And not really understanding why the local natives were doing everything they can to kill him. And in that end, it's not a good versus evil in any shape or form. This was just, as you say, a harrowing story.
Indeed.
I immensely enjoyed it.
Indeed. Yes. It's I liked it more the second time, actually. So, just to slot aside all of the Godzilla stuff, I watched it subtitled, which made it even harder to pick characters out. You know, in the end, it's a foreign language I don't understand. I'm hearing the language and reading the words, and the characters did really blur into one for me when I first watched it subtitled. And that meant that I found the boardroom scenes. Well, I did understand the message, and I didn't quite grasp the humor because I wasn't paying enough attention to how it was being shot. Because that's kind of, I think, where a lot of the humor and the satire comes from. It's the way Anno comically frames everyone constantly. Some of the performances, I remember the Prime Minister. He's like that dumbfounded look on his face all the way through it is actually kind of hilarious, you know. But I struggled with the boardroom scenes at first, but I appreciated it. I didn't love it. I definitely I found it more enjoyable watching it dubbed and being able to appreciate the frame and be able to appreciate the performances and to be able to appreciate the cinematography, because it's a very good looking film. I would say the cinematography in this film is far more interesting than in Minus One. You know, this is a borderline art house movie. Really, some of the shots of like Tokyo from afar, Japan from afar, are incredible. The destruction in this film, even now, like 8 years later, still looks good in my opinion, Mark.
Yeah.
You know, the sequence with the tsunami-like sequence, let's say, with all the boats and the cars flying everywhere, looks incredible. You know, and there was always something quite interesting, harrowing, maybe I would say, about just seeing Godzilla in the distance. There's a lot of shots of like people doing stuff on Godzilla in the distance, and it was quite effective. You know. Tonally interesting. It's a tonally interesting film as well, with, let's say, the aforementioned imagery. The soundtrack by Shiro Sagatu is interesting. He actually uses a few like Evangelion motifs. There's a really famous Evangelion motif where it's drums, the dun 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 dun. When everyone's like in a boardroom going, "Oh, we must do this." It's like in Evangelion. It's like. That music is used for when they're all in the offices planning the kids to get into the Evangelion, and he sort of replicates that. But
desperate hope.
Well, it's kind of the music you apply to the people not actually fighting. Discussing what's yeah. Like it's kind of represents the same sort of energy. I would say it's really cool. It's really cool. And there's lots of like typical motifs, to say the obtuse storytelling. He loves like a shot of the traffic lights as well. He always loves that. But what was you going to say?
I would say that after like the discussion we had last week in terms of the actual Godzilla theme itself, in terms of that main theme, I believe it was used in both these movies, wasn't it? Shin and Minus One.
Oh yes.
And now I understand what you mean about that theme.
Which theme specifically? Because there's a few I've talked about.
The one that dun, dun.
Oh, sorry, the musical score. So yeah, you've got the Shiro Sagatu score, but then the 1954 music is brought into this as well.
Man,
so yeah,
now I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
When I was going about the fact they used it with what's his name, Serge Tankian remixed at the end of. King of
it's
Monsters.
terrible.
I mean, it would be like remixing the Jaws theme.
Yeah,
it just now I understand how pure and clear and ominous that initial theme is in terms of holy shit, you are all fucked.
Yeah, but then there's the slightly faster, more melodramatic theme as well, which they remix in the King of the Monsters film, and just like Jaws, I say it's simplistic, but it's so elegant and affecting in its simplicity that changing it, adding synthesized choruses to it, just dilutes it.
Yeah,
really, just oversaturates it.
It's pure. It's just it's a warning, and that's literally it.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I would say watching this film again, dubbed, I actually liked it a lot more. I always liked it, but I didn't love it, and I actually think my appreciation for it has grown a lot more after watching it today, dubbed. You know, and as I say, looking back into like the hidden story elements, to do Goramaki, I think definitely lends itself to the uncomfortable notion and the sadness in the film. You know, as mentioned multiple times in this podcast, I'm a big fan of like films that leave you thinking. And let me put this to you, Mark. Like the simple fact that there's an entire element of plot in this film that you do not see on screen, that you are forced to imagine, makes that seem more tangible and more kind of profound than what you're seeing on screen. And like the imagery that's in my head of Goramaki like being like emotionally hurt and discovering this creature, you know, mutating it and maybe even becoming one with the creature, which is so obtuse, but it works in my mind.
Now to explain the rage it has for Japan. So,
well, like I said, I don't know if that would, you could say that, yeah. We'll talk about Rage in a minute, but in the next film. But as I said, I don't know if Rage is not really something I apply to Godzilla in this film. Like with the lyrics to that song, it just seems like Godzilla is a victim, like he is in many of these other films, but a victim that is trying to just live because of that comes with that comes the sadness, you know, of him trying to just live. Yeah. And like I said, it always seems like his powers in this movie cause him great pain. You know, like just using them is causing him great pain to defend himself. That is something that I've always taken away from this film specifically. And it's something I've never forgotten. You know, the image of Godzilla's mouth opening when he, like, what the hell is that all about? The shape of it, the jaw, the
teeth and
it's so alien and weird.
Yeah, it has that weird tissue like all lining the inside. It's fresh, kind of freshly evolved. So it almost looks like you're not even sure what he's adapting to anymore. I'm not even sure he understands that.
No, and that just adds to the potency of like the terror of the creature, the mystery, the awe, you know, and maybe even the sympathy I feel towards it as well. It's a strange movie to me. Maybe it's because of like a cultural barrier, but like I said, the politics. I don't know if you know this yet, but this film was critically acclaimed.
Oh, it does not surprise
in Japan.
Wow, that surprised me a little.
Everywhere else?
Really?
Yeah. Because a lot of people found the boardroom scenes boring and the message good, but it's too slow.
Fuck's sake.
You know, and I on my first watch, I told you when I watched it subtitled, I kind of felt that way as well, actually. But I got the message.
I was into the board meeting straight off the bat because we've seen. Bear in mind, it's coming off the bat of watching sort of like Godzilla and King of Monsters and Skull Island recently. I've had my fill of monsters beating the holy shit out of each other.
Yes,
and it was interesting to watch a much more,
cerebral.
Yes, watching human reaction to it, watching people panic and go and trying to understand and throwing around theories about how the fuck is he doing this? He doesn't. How has he got this energy? How is he creating and all of that? Like, I love it when they dissect monsters. I love it when they start breaking them down and start looking into the concepts that make them tick. So I know I've always been a fan of that sort of thing.
When I watched it dubbed, as I said, and I was able to tell apart the characters more, and just to say this, I do prefer to watch like foreign films subtitled. It's just. I don't know. It's just the way this. I don't know. Or maybe it's a film you need to see twice. I don't know. Maybe it's because I watched it dubbed. I don't know. I found it easier to tell apart the characters in this one anyway, and I enjoyed it more. And like I said, I enjoyed the satire. And yes, you're right. It is interesting. It is. There's a certain amount of futility in what they're doing.
Oh yeah, they're raging against essentially the storm.
Yeah. So and like. I guess that just adds to the satire even more. The futility of it all is kind of hilarious. I did like that sequence, though, because they have the replacement prime minister, and they want him to appeal to give them more time to enact the plan, because obviously the West are going to drop bombs on Shin Godzilla unless they freeze him with this Japanese-born plan. And then you don't know what's happened. He said there's no point, whatever, what's done must be done. And then they attempt the plan, and then it's found out that they only just had enough time to enact this plan before the bombs are dropped. And it's revealed that the only reason why they had enough time is because the replacement president went to the French embassy and begs for more time. And there's a really powerful shot with the music where he's bowed completely over in front of an unseen important person. And you know that with Japanese people, when they bow, the further down they bow,
you press your head to the ground, and
the more respect you have, isn't it?
Yeah.
The further down you go, the more respect you have for the person. And he's literally like at a right angle, and nothing said. It just shows him at a right angle. And I thought, I found that really powerful, actually. That like they did spend a lot of time talking about like saving lives, and this prime minister said he wasn't going to do something and then went and did it anyway, which shows an improvement from the previous one. Progression of
it shows he was willing to put his pride to one side in favour of his country.
Yes. Which I found that quite moving. There is that notion of like, this is a Japanese problem, the Japanese people need to deal with it, which I like as well, the will of the people and stuff.
Please give us an opportunity to fix our mistakes.
Yes. So yes. But yes, as well, and there's also, and a final note, that I'm just looking at my notes and seeing there's something I did miss. There is that notion of people in power using their position to protect themselves at the expense of citizens' lives. As you mentioned earlier on, when they're all arguing with each other in the boardrooms, they are sort of doing it, but also using, like, they're sort of doing it
for self-promotion.
Yes, it is all for self-promotion, just to add to what you were saying earlier on.
Yeah.
You said it earlier on, then we moved, I think, and I said to myself, no, we need to come back to that. So, which I think is quite
clever. People that they're kind of giving suggestions, but they want you to suggest it in such a way of like, oh, is everyone listening? Like, I might have the solution here.
I think they all think they're safe because they're important as well. There's a distance.
They feel detached from the actual threat,
which is again part of that satire of the Japanese government not acting quick enough during these real disasters.
Yeah.
So, it's potent stuff. So that's Shin Godzilla, Marc. So I think that is a good opportunity. Unless you have anything else to say about this movie?
No, man, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity there to take a break, and we'll be right back to talk about Godzilla Minus One. Welcome back to the podcast. So, Marc, now we're going to finally get round to talking about Godzilla Minus One. Are you ready?
Right. If I could just stop you for a moment, man.
Okay.
You motherfucker, seriously.
What have I done?
Go watch Godzilla Minus One, Marc. It's got a bit more of a human interest story. Yes, you told me this. You didn't warn me! We've been watching Godzilla movies for the last couple of weeks, and I've been watching it because it's got monsters punching each other. I didn't expect to go into a movie and come out caring about actual human characters in a Godzilla movie.
Imagine it.
Jesus Christ, man. This movie...
Hold tight, man. Hold tight. I know you've been bursting to get this out As I said, I will open the floor to you very soon, and you can really tell me how you feel.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
So, Godzilla Minus One, released in 2023, just made history by receiving the Oscar nod for special effects in 2024. Fantastic. I mean, you know, there have been complaints about this film not getting like nominated for Best Picture, foreign Best Picture, whatever. But in the end, it's up to the Japanese government, film government, whatever, people, other people to decide. It's not up to the Americans to decide. So, you know, the fact this film got the nod is a massive thing. A massive thing. You know, this film cost fucking 10 million to make, which is pennies. And like there is discussion about how the CGI was influenced by 90s CGI more than anything else, you know. And I saw this film at the cinema, by the way, Mark.
Yeah.
I saw this film at the cinema as well. And like, well, it doesn't look, you don't look at it and go, wow, that actually looks like Godzilla's there. But it looks good enough, let's say. But anyway, so this is another reboot, and it celebrates the franchise's 70th anniversary, and it actually surpassed Shin Godzilla as the most successful Japanese Godzilla film. Directed by Takashi Yamazaki, written by Takashi Yamazaki, special effects by Takashi Yamazaki. Are you seeing a film here? You know, this film has a vision, a clear vision. To be honest with you, so does Shin Godzilla, obviously. When we get like the right sort of writer-director, an auteur, a creative, you know, behind the wheel, Godzilla's only as good as his makers, let's be honest. So anyway, let's run through the plot quickly. The plot is not too complicated, so this won't take very long. In 1945, kamikaze pilot Shikishima is disgraced for not fulfilling his duty. But that night, Godzilla attacks the garrison that Shikishima is at, but this Godzilla is like the Godzillasaurus that we hear about, you know, the original lost dinosaur. Shikishima again freezes up and is unable to do what he must do, and is blamed for the amount of people that die in the incident, being the only survivor. Shikishima returns home to find that his family was killed in the bombing of Tokyo, and eventually falls in with a woman, Noriki, and Noriki Oshi, who also lost her family, and a orphaned girl, Akiki. This girl. Anyway, so Shikishima ends up working aboard a minesweeper tasked with disposing naval mines. Love these characters. Absolutely fucking love them. We'll get back to them. This is where we first see Godzilla appearing, who is now mutated by US nuclear tests at the Bikini Atoll. Because of tensions with the Soviet Union, the US will not help the Japanese government, save donating a few vessels. Godzilla attacks and destroys Ginza in Japan, destroys so much of the district with his heat ray. He kills a lot of fucking people. We will be coming back to this scene. Oh my god! Including Noriko, who is presumed dead. Shikishima vows vengeance. So, frustrated by the government's inaction, again, the people hatch out a plan to kill Godzilla for good by sinking it to the bottom of the sea. The plan is enacted. It doesn't quite work out. Shikishima lures Godzilla into the situation. Things go wrong. However, Godzilla is defeated by Shikishima flying a plane into Godzilla's mouth as he is about to fire his heat ray. Fuck me, Mark. What a scene. Fuck me. Yes. Why did no one think of this before? I might. You know, returning home, it appears that Noriko has survived, but Godzilla also has. As during the film, it is noted he has regenerative abilities, and a chunk of flesh is left over from the final battle, sinking in the ocean. So, very, very, very quick fire summary of the story. We'll get more into the beats of the story now. But before we do that, Mark, the floor is yours.
I wasn't prepared for this movie.
Mate, look, you know me. I do not recommend movies that intensely unless it's the kind of movie that's going to destroy you emotionally.
I wasn't ready for this.
You should have seen this coming, mate. I didn't say, Shin Godzilla, Godzilla Minus One is a very good movie. I'm pretty sure I said to you, I just come out of the cinema and you must watch this movie, I think.
Yeah, and that could mean anything, man.
I said that the human stories.
How to do Hadokens for him. I don't know.
The truth is, I just don't like to over egg the pudding when I recommend films to people. I don't like to go mad at people.
All you like to do is put a stamp of approval on it and go, "This is a movie I like."
Yeah,
and just let people draw their own conclusions from it.
Yeah, I don't like. Yeah, exactly. I'd much rather. Because the thing is with this, I know I'm taking over already, but I will hand it back to you. But like, I saw the trailer for this film and went, "Well, I'm going to see this movie." But I didn't know that the human story was going to be as good as it was. No one knew, you know. But the reviews that were coming were saying this is a fucking good movie, you know. And I
like the fact that Godzilla is only in this movie for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, but what 15 minutes?
Yes, but that is the point. Is they took the Jaws approach. They minimized the monster and they made you care about the characters. They made you care about the human element.
Yeah.
And the main character, Shikishima, is such a good character.
Yeah. Why do you think that is, though?
Because he's a coward. He's a coward on multiple levels. He's a character that's easier to relate to than these kind of bureaucratic nonsense or these heroes that go charging in and sort of like, we need a plan and stuff. This is a guy that is much easier to understand because he is frozen up multiple times, whether it be in wartime, whether it be emotionally, whether it be with the family that was thrust upon him. He's petrified, and he uses excuses of it still being his war and all of that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, he is afraid, and there's nothing wrong with being afraid.
It's a very human, relatable reaction.
Exactly. It's a character that maybe some people will watch him and go, he's a coward. Like he's.
I'm going to say this now, right? When me and Hayley left the cinema, I heard someone actually say, "Oh, I just watched a film about Godzilla being beaten by a coward," and I was so angry. I was so angry.
Get it?
Yeah, I was angry. I could have actually punched him, but I was like, no.
How did you miss the fucking point?
Yeah.
This is a guy that is, on multiple levels, had decisions made for him. When he was drafted to the military, he had to become a kamikaze pilot, and that is literally being told, "You have to die for your country."
Mm-hmm.
And he ran away from that, and that's understandable. Then he gets back to his homeland, and through a sequence of events that he doesn't really have control over, he suddenly has a family. He has a woman that he hasn't really invited into his home and a child, and he's petrified of that. He doesn't want to open up to them. And he, as I say, he uses the excuse of the war and that he's traumatized, but you can tell it's not that. He's just scared of opening up. And it's easy to turn around and go, "Oh, he's a coward." It's simple. Yeah, he's chicken. Nah, I get it. I mean, I don't know if I would have been that walled off myself, but nonetheless, I can understand this character, and it actually made me relate to him a hell of a lot more. And it made, when he finally embraced his destiny, for want of a better term, all the more empowering when he finally turned and go, "No, I am making the choice here. I am choosing to sacrifice myself for my child." And yeah, that all of that just kind of really hit a real lump in my throat. And the other characters, as you say, like Noriko and all that, she was really, really interesting as the counterpart to him.
She is his counterpoint
in terms of drawing him out and just trying to get him to be more than this person that's allowed fate to decide his will. And you say that kid, Akiko, it's just
endearing and cute in the worst way possible.
Right, any kid that cries that much in a movie, you'd be like, "Shut the fuck up!" But her, I was just like, I mean, that was like the first time I got angry at Shikishima is at that dinner when his kid turned around to him and I said, "Daddy," and he said, "Don't call me that."
Yeah.
That was the first time in the entire movie I went, "You son of a bitch, man! You son of a bitch!"
Because he doesn't. He's putting a wall up, isn't he, to a child because he's so scared.
Everything else, I could argue, I could explain, but that was the one I went, "No, man, no, come on."
Yeah.
And like everything else, I can understand why you fight it, but this is an innocent kid, and yeah, that one was kind of sort of when he's got all of his friends around him going, "You can't do that shit, like it's a fate. Your fate has brought you this family and stuff like that." And it's like I thought that was actually kind of beautiful that they were trying to convince him that no, you need to embrace this. You've been given a gift by tragedy. Just take it, and he couldn't take it, not at first anyway, because he had too much trauma connected with the war and with Godzilla. And let's shift the floor a moment now to Godzilla. Now, there's so much I could talk about with regards to this creature. This was, I mean, as you said, the Godzillasaurus. That was a nice introduction. I mean, holy shit, you got no fucking warning on that one, did you?
Yeah, it was a shock, that's for sure, in the cinema. Bloody hell.
Like, yeah, front and centre, let's get on with this. And he suddenly gets on with it. And it's just, and that's also where you get the introduction of Tachibana, who I actually really like that character as well. He really comes into his own later on, and we shall get to that later as well. But just seeing Godzilla suddenly just there, I mean, it's a proto-Godzilla. It's not quite as large as he's going to be. And
it's the Godzillasaurus, isn't it? It's insinuated that it's like the people on the island sort of feed it fish because they view it as some kind of godlike creature.
Yeah, they placate it.
Yeah.
And also, those dead fish are a lovely indicator. The way in which sort of like the indication that dead fish suddenly rise to the surface, kind of like he emanates radiation and it kills all the wildlife around him.
Yeah.
As a good indication of, oh shit, it's not quite on the level of the cup resonating in Jurassic Park, but it's a nice little sort of...
It's a nice touch.
Yeah, I liked it. But let's come to that scene, if that's all right with yourself.
Of course, yeah.
The atomic breath scene.
Wow.
Now, yeah, I mean, we've seen atomic breath. I mean, I've seen Godzilla. When they had that moment when his tail started to light up, I'd never watched Godzilla before. I didn't really know what that meant. And just seeing it live fire up and pulse up his body, and then he does the atomic breath, and that was a cool sequence in the 2014 movie. This one was different. There was something about the way you watch every single one of his spine punch up and glow.
Yes.
And slowly but methodically, that almost sounds like a train.
Yes.
Hammering up his body. And then when they all just slammed in, all as one, and he released. And you think, oh, he's doing the atomic breath.
You do, don't you? That's not, yes. I think, oh, yeah, it's this bit, and then
oh my god! Just having that moment of just kind of, it is literally an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And everything that follows, that shockwave, the loss of Noriko.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I'm watching this on my computer monitor when I watch this movie, and
you have a big computer monitor, don't you? It's like
I've got a 40-inch computer monitor. And that was the moment when I went, "You son of a bitch, you're right. I should have watched this in the cinema."
Yeah, I told you. I fucking told you, mate.
Yeah, you're right. Holy shit, man! That was the best atomic breath sequence I've seen for Godzilla so far, and I don't think anything in the past can top it. Like, I haven't even seen some of those classic movies, but I know for a fact
no. This is the best. This is the best. I say, like, the sequence in Shin Godzilla was like really creative and really like harrowing, but then this
was something else. That sequence where you see him just turn away with the mushroom cloud he's just created and rising up behind him, just. It's a little on the nose in terms of like the whole atomic warning that is Godzilla.
Yeah.
But at the same token, it was just so kind of, holy shit, this is so much more devastating than anything we've seen before from him. This isn't a guy that is going to step on you. This is a guy that's going to wipe out square kilometers just by breathing. And it's just, wasn't prepared for that. That one took me by surprise. And I'm really glad it did. I'm glad I saw nothing about this. I saw no trailers. Saw no build-up.
Wait. You didn't even see a trailer?
I didn't watch anything. I went in totally blank on this one.
Lucky you, mate. I mean, well, I went 90% blank. 90% blank. So
I knew nothing about this movie when I went in. And stepping away from Godzilla for a moment and letting him retreat into the distance. Yes, the supporting cast in this were brilliant. I mean, you talk about like, so you've got the main character, you've got Shikishima, you've got Noriko, and you've got Akiko. Yeah, the main three. But then you've got that boat crew. And they were a joy, man. There was something about watching the way in which they interacted with each other. Was it the captain?
The camaraderie, man, was like absolutely top-notch.
Even when the moment when the kid oversteps his mark and goes, I wish that war had lasted a little longer, then maybe I could have gotten in with it. And he just grabs him and goes, don't you dare mean that.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Just those moments were just so poignant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really loved the dialogue between the characters in this.
It's very, very well written, very realistic. They all had distinct personalities that were not just embodied by the characters, so that because I watched the subtitle. Did you watch it dubbed?
I watched it subtitled.
Yeah, this is my point. So the performances were not one note; they were very distinctive. The dialogue was distinctive, so you really got a feel for their characters the moment they spoke.
Yeah,
and I say
no one said anything stupid or out of character. It was actually like, I can see why they would say that.
Yeah,
everything about it was just interesting to watch. I mean, every single character, every choice that was made was understandable. Even when he's at home and he's just told his, I suppose, his new housewife that I'm going to be a minesweeper, and she's screaming at him like, "I forbid you to die."
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, "I've got no choice. This is what we need to do if we want to have the money, if we want to survive."
Yes.
And that's 2 points of view. You can see both sides. There's no bastards here in terms of like, why the fuck are you arguing that point? It's just you can understand everyone's points of view here.
That's what makes it so realistic. Is because there aren't really clear-cut black and white answers to anything in this movie. Really, they are all like truly like human questions and human desires.
Yeah. Even when with the scientist, when he puts forward the Freon idea of the gas membrane around Godzilla, and he goes, right, we're going to need some people, and a good like half of the hall walks out. You don't see those people as cowards. You just see them as kind of it's an understandable reaction. This is all on the faith of the words of one man who thinks he's got an idea and can't guarantee it's going to work. Because they ask him, will this work? And he can't say yes. Because he's too honest. He's like, no, but this is our best chance.
Yeah.
And even then after that, when the men that are left try to build this strange camaraderie, when they start making laughs and jokes about the fact that, we're going to have to do what we can sort of thing. All of it just really really resonated with me. Like, I immensely enjoyed this movie. I will say that there is one point which might stick a little bit for me, and that'd be the final hurdle, wherein after everything's said and done, Godzilla's been dispatched, Shikishima has been reunited with Akiko, and he gets handed a telegram that was received by the neighbor, and it turns out Noriko survived.
Yeah.
That was a touch cheesy. However, whilst it was a touch cheesy, I'm not going to deny that I didn't have a lump in my throat. When he goes to that hospital, I might have welled up a touch and just seeing her look at him and go, "Is your war over?"
Mm-mm.
I mean, as much as it was like, okay, they're tying up all the bows and everyone gets a happy ending, but it's
Come on, man.
Yeah,
sometimes
you want your main character to have a happy ending.
He deserved it.
Yeah, because when Noriko got supposedly killed off by the atomic breath, that was harsh. That was so fucking harsh. When it had the funeral sequence afterwards, where they're all sat there in his house, and Akiko's crying for her mummy.
Oh, it's awful.
And all he can do
harrowing.
is walk away and stand in another room, just kind of dealing with his own grief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this movie hurt me, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for this. So,
I'm glad it destroyed you.
It did, man.
It destroyed me when I watched it.
It breaks you a little, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. There's a few things that there's a few elements of this movie that I think that I'd like to point out that make it really effective. Is that like Shikishima's grief is on show in this film for you to see, and the camera does not shy away. It does not follow it up with quips.
Yeah.
Yep. Nope. No fucking cutaways. No one-liners. No bullshit. You are seeing Shikishima and every character in this film. They grieve. They grieve like human beings because they are going through a natural disaster of incredible unimaginable proportions. This is like, it's like Godzilla is the allegory for the atomic bomb. The reactions, the destruction, the broken families, the will to survive, the rejoining of human connections. This is what happened to the Japanese people, and we get to see this like
front
and center. That's what makes this film so powerful. That's what makes this movie so relatable. Obviously, there are plot elements and character elements, as you mentioned, but it's the simple fact that this film does not shy away from human emotion. That person who walked out of the cinema going, Godzilla got beaten by some coward, probably is a coward himself, and probably is not in tune with his own emotions, and probably found the film a bit too disturbing because of how naked and honest this film is. I've spoken in the past about writers like Hemingway, for example, who want to find the truth in the human soul. Something, when I first watched Twin Peaks, which for the record is one of my favorite TV shows ever, I struggled with it because obviously the story of Twin Peaks is about Laura Palmer's death, and there are a lot of scenes in the beginning filmed of her mother, Sarah Palmer, grieving, and David Lynch does the same thing. He just films Sarah Palmer literally grizzling in front of the camera, and he doesn't cut away. Just when normally someone will cut away because that's enough. No, you need to see. And it's the same in this film.
Embrace the pain. Yeah.
You need to see that this character is extremely traumatized, extremely broken, so that you can invest in this fantastical otherworld that is happening on screen. And I think that's one of the things that makes this film so successful, is because it will not lie to you about what these characters feel. It literally bulldozes you with these characters' emotions. And if you're willing to take it on board, if you're the kind of person that's willing to accept it, it makes every single fantastical action sequence so much more intense and immersive. Like the core themes of the story, family, human connections, what is important in life, even if it is manufactured out of disaster. It happens in front of you.
It's all about seizing happiness wherever you find it.
Yeah.
That's what made this movie so beautiful.
It is a beautiful movie because of the human story, truthfully. But there is this parallel in the theming. Did you detect it on your first watch?
Well, so.
Okay, I'll explain it to you. Because this is something I found really, really fascinating about this movie, is that Godzilla and Shikishima have parallel story arcs. They are both on character arcs at the same time. They are both aborted life forms through events beyond their control.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
And here's the thing. So Shikishima is a kamikaze pilot who is supposed to sacrifice himself in a war that is beyond his control because he's told to by the Japanese government, etc., etc., etc. Godzilla is an atomic mutated monster created by nuclear testing, and he did not ask for this existence. And Shikishima did not ask for his existence, let's say, but because of his fear to sacrifice himself, because of his cowardice to perform his duty, he sort of lives in a non-life afterwards, doesn't he? He's like a ghost, almost.
Because his trauma, his PTSD.
Yes.
It's left him just kind of a shell of his former self.
There's a reason why at the beginning of the film, Shikishima and Godzilla come face to face, and Shikishima doesn't act. It is to say that these characters are sort of on literally, figuratively speaking, on a collision course of each other, And for me, in this film, Godzilla is a figure of rage, of anger. Did you detect that yourself?
Yeah.
And it's almost like he's angered by his very existence. He's so angry by the disaster that has created him that he's taking it out on humankind.
When he first appears in the city, and that theme kicks in for the first time.
Yeah.
Whilst Noriko's going past on the train.
Oh, the train! He loves a train, doesn't he? He's always eating trains, old Godzilla. I like the fact they rammed him with trains in Shin Godzilla. It was like revenge.
Train, go!
But anyway, sorry. Yes.
But yeah, that was the first time when you really saw. Up until that point, I mean, he had sort of like kind of like a primal anger, but that was the first time you felt a real intent behind the anger.
Yes.
When he was smashing through the city, when you had the news crew on the building filming him as he goes past, which I'm going to be honest, that was comical.
It was pretty funny.
Like, he's literally 20 feet away from you. Run! And it's like, but no. So credits due. They filmed it to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was just for the delivery of the almighty blast. It was, yeah, you got a real intent of anger from him. That
the eyes, mate. It's the eyes.
Yeah,
it's the fucking eyes. The scene in the Minesweeper when he's chasing them, you know, and like his head's just above water, and the eyes are just looking at him.
And they're throwing mines into his mouth.
Yeah. Like, oh my.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like he is, as I said, this embodiment of rage, and yet at the same time, you know, Shikishima is not enraged by his own existence. He's traumatized by the guilt of his own existence.
He's almost ashamed of himself.
Yeah, and it's really about, you know, Shikishima sort of being able to accept that he's still alive and take charge of being alive.
I mean, literally, that first thing that happens when he goes back to his homeland is he meets a friend of his parents who immediately starts berating him for the fact that people like him are the reason why his parents are dead.
Yes.
And that was such a harsh scene. Like,
mate, Tachibana, mate, who denounces him for surviving in the first place, and then there's that, and then he calls him for help. I love how they like disguise what because obviously, as we said,
the final sequence,
there's that final sequence where he flies his plane into Godzilla's mouth, and you don't know that he's got an ejector seat built in, and it's actually Tachibana, the man who denounced him for his cowardice at the beginning of the movie, tells him
following through on his kamikaze. Mission.
When he is in a position to fulfill it, he says, "No, life is too important."
It's because it's just after he's seen the pictures, holding in the pictures of Akiko's drawn for him.
Yes.
And you can see that man, and when he's listening on the radio and they start reporting back, he's alive, and you can see Tachibana's getting welling up about the fact that, Oh my god, that got me, man. That really got me. Feeling emotions I didn't even know I had.
Indeed.
So, that one was that was a good scene.
There's a lot of good scenes in this movie.
Even the sequence where the second time you see the atomic breath charging up, and you think, "Motherfuckers, get out the way, get out the way, get out the way," and then you're like, "He's still charging," and then it snaps, and you realise it's a decoy, and they've roped up the wheel of that ship just so they can give him something to fire at. It's like, okay, this movie's about a step or two ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I liked it for that. There's little touches like that. That this is a movie. The plot points have been well thought out. All the beats are in the right place.
But I also think, like, because you're so invested, you forget you're watching a movie. This is something that I wanted to bring up that is so important to the success of this movie. You are so invested in these characters that as I said, it makes the other world, the fantasy elements of the story, more immersive. You're allowing your suspension of disbelief to watch the movie. But this film does have a few narrative beats that are like, you know, archetypical of a film, such as the heroine dying and then being alive at the end. You know, I thought she was dead. And then when she came back, I was fucking glad she was alive because I fucking cared.
I was too, man.
Even though you were a bit cynical and bitter earlier on.
Yeah, even though I was cynical about the concept of like, she's alive, he gets his happy ending. At the same time, there was a part of me that's like, I'm glad he got his happy ending.
when Shikishima crashes the plane into his fucking mouth, and I love the way his head explodes. I didn't know he was going to be
alive for a second, isn't there? It's kind of like the plane just hammers in there, and it pauses for a second before it goes off. And you're like, I felt that.
Yeah. But at that moment, I didn't know whether Shikishima was alive or dead or not. I honestly didn't think to myself.
That's because up until that point, the story has left you with that uncertainty. Like, this is a man who's willing to kill himself for his...
Is he now? That's the question. Is he now going to do it?
Everything he's been saying up until this point suggests he will. And you do have that doubt. It's like, will he? Is there a way out of this? Because this is bigger than him and his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that it gave that ambiguity. Up until the last steps, you were kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I can understand if he did, but at the same time, what sort of ending is that? And then when it gives you that lifeline of the parachute up in the sky.
Yeah, man.
And you do feel like a real joy when all the other guys start shouting, when it gets reported over the radio, Shikishima's still alive. And that was a very, very cathartic moment.
It makes a change, doesn't it? You know, to care.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
I mean, when was the last time we cared about a character in any human characters in a Godzilla movie?
Well, that's what I think is so kind of ironic, isn't it? I think like 2023 went down as being one of the worst films in mainstream cinema history. Worst years, in mainstream cinema history. You know, a lot of people were just really tired of Marvel movies having nothing. You know, Hollywood churning out nothing. And then suddenly this Godzilla movie comes out and everyone's crying watching it because they're so moved by the human story that also features some gigantic lizard breathing, you know, fire. You know, and like, it's, if you went back like 20, 30 years to fucking Godzilla versus Megalon with fucking Jet Jaguar in it and that super annoying kid that I mentioned earlier on, I would never, ever, even from Shin Godzilla, to be honest with you, I would never have believed you that I was going to watch a film
this far forwards in terms of like plot development and characterization.
As I mentioned, Godzilla 2014 is halfway there. Like, the first half, if they had found a way to
keep Cranston in it,
and to write his human drama into the arc of the narrative, like this film does, because that's what this film does. It entwines.
They had to set up there with him. They had it, and they decided to go, no, we're going to give it to his kid,
who's got nothing. You know, exactly. And that's the beauty of this film, is that like the through line is that Godzilla and Shikishima are both, you know, aborted life forms.
Their destinies are entwined.
Yes, they're both victims of World War II. You know, and obviously, there's all the other typical allegories of the Japanese spirit and whatever, and which is all.
I mean, even when the kid turns up with the tugboats,
yes,
and they start towing the two main ships, and all of that, like that gets a lump in my throat. Like, the last 20 minutes of this was kind of hit after hit of just kind of like, I'm not crying.
Yeah, yes, definitely. I did think it was a little bit far-fetched that the Japanese government just sort of went, "Nah, we're not doing anything. It's up to you now." That was a bit far-fetched, but
we sure you citizens can take care of yourself.
You know, and I mean, but let's be honest. Like, when a film's heart is in the right place, I can forgive like weird plot discrepancies like that. Because apart from that. And maybe some weird pacing in like Act 2 when they sort of were getting the film going. Like, this is like almost a perfect movie. It's a perfect Godzilla movie, but it's almost a perfect movie for me. I've really gone.
You can forgive contrivances that go towards creating more stakes for the protagonists.
Absolutely,
kind of like making it easier for them. If it's a contrivance that adds more in terms of like more to overcome, you're like, okay, fine, fair enough. Go, hit me. Let's see how this goes. Mm-hmm. So it's not a Deus Ex Machina, but almost the reverse of it. Of like, okay, so now there's more you have to deal with.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're absolutely right. It's because, I say, in the end, it's the conflict, isn't it? That's where this story starts. This film begins. Is that the conflict is always relatable. It's always tangible. It's very human, and like all the way through the film, you understand the stakes all the way through it because they are put in front of you. Front and center, without like CGI, without quips or one-liners or quick
purely
cuts.
In the emotion of the characters on the screen. And
the stunning performances, you know, isn't it? It's the stunning performances of the actors. I don't know. I can't remember the actor's name. Terrible research, but you know, the actor who played Shikishima, you know, he
was phenomenal. Like,
I dread to think.
So many sequences were just him, without any dialogue, just pure expression and nothing else, and he nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, even that straight off the first scene where the guy starts questioning him over the fact that we didn't find anything wrong with your plane.
Mm-hmm.
And he storms off like defensively and just sits on the edge of the island.
Mm-hmm.
And even Tachibana has to go over to him and goes, I get it, kid. I understand. But we all have a job to do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, even that, he has sympathy for him at that point before the inevitable Godzilla-saurus assault. I think his sympathy's waned a little bit after that sequence, but
yeah,
I still love that he managed to redeem himself in Tachibana's eyes as well. That was really nice.
Yeah.
That was a big one for me.
Yeah. I since seeing the film, and even up until this point, and after watching Shin Godzilla, talking about it to you now, I've been really thinking about whether or not this is a 10 out of 10 movie, because making it a 10 out of 10 movie, right, puts it up there with like The Godfather, and fucking Terminator 2, and Dark City.
Yeah, this is a strong sort of like, there aren't many Godzilla movies I go, you gotta watch this. This is one I'd recommend.
Yeah, it's
to people outside of the the kind of the demographic that this would normally be aimed at. This is a movie I go, no, if you want to get into Godzilla, check out Minus One. It's a strong movie. If
you're used to like the American style and all the silly movies, it might be a bit of a shock. I actually asked Adam, who's as big a Godzilla fan as I am, because we watched the films together as kids, and he said himself he was a bit taken aback by this film. He was a bit like, "Whoa, that's not quite what I was expecting." Is that But in reality, there's like 37 Godzilla movies. 4 of them.
Time they took a new angle on it.
Well, no, hold tight. 4 of them are like this. 4 of them.
Huh?
Take the serious tone, like this film does. Godzilla 1954, Godzilla 1984, Return of Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, and this one. There's only 4 films in the entire fucking Japanese franchise that do take regardless of how they go about the source material, they take the source material seriously.
They play it straight to the bone.
Yeah.
Rather than having him surfing on his tail.
Truth be told, because I had sort of become a bit disenchanted with the Monsterverse, because I didn't like King of the Monsters very much, and I liked Godzilla X Kong. I told you, it certainly got me a bit back on board, thinking like, do you know what, that was a really fun movie. I liked Skull Island, as I said earlier on. And then Godzilla X Kong, I was kind of like, I'm not sure about that. I think I'm kind of done with it. And then I saw this film, right? And then I saw the trailer again for Godzilla X Kong, and I went, actually, I am on board with this, because I have my amazingly, seriously well done, beautifully constructed, beautifully written.
It's the kind of same way that it's the same way that I can appreciate Lego Batman.
Yes.
Having watched Matt Reeves' The Batman.
Yes.
Because I've got my gritty and real and played it totally straight Batman, and now I can enjoy Will Arnett taking the piss.
Yeah.
Although I'm going to be honest though, having watched this movie and Shin, and then looking at the trailer for the new Empire, there's a real mood whiplash that comes with watching Godzilla and Kong in their own buddy cop movie.
I know, right? It's that scene when they when Godzilla, when Kong's like running at the screen, then Godzilla like jumps out and like
they're charging together. It's like, oh my god, you guys are fucked. They're both together now.
Like I'm kind of down for it, I'm down for that movie. I'm like, do you know what? Right, I've got my fucking super serious, super beautiful, brilliant Godzilla movie. Now let's
I can't do anything to damage this. This is perfect and eternal now. Let's have some fun with it. And I get that, but at the same time, it is a hell of a whiplash in terms of tone.
Indeed.
But nonetheless, that's the point. Godzilla is more than just a movie. Like Batman, like characters like that they can be more than just a specific style of movie or a specific atmosphere or a specific emotion. They can be bigger than that. And it's nice that you can see all these different interpretations of such an interesting IP. I'm glad you really got me to watch all these movies recently, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good stuff, mate. It's good stuff. As I said, I'm glad we got the Godzilla film we deserved after so long. Because as I said, Shin Godzilla is a good movie, but it doesn't have the characterization for me personally. As I said, I do think there's like a cultural barrier between me and Shin Godzilla personally. You said you liked the boardroom meetings, but
I can appreciate that what he was going for. I mean,
yeah,
I just don't know it was Evangelion's creator for that one. Now that you say that that connects a couple of dots that I didn't realize needed connecting for me.
It's a great movie, but it's not. Godzilla Minus One is like.
Right, Shin Godzilla is a nice interpretation. It's an interesting angle on a pre-established concept. But this Minus One was something new. It was totally aside from anything that had come before, and it found a new tone. For me, anyway.
No, you're right. For a lot of people, it did it. It moved.
I even did some research into this to ascertain what does the title Minus One even mean. I mean, originally when I first researched this, I thought it was like in the past has there been like a Godzilla Zero, and is this like a prequel to that, and that's why they're calling it Minus One?
No.
And I realized no, that's not the case. It is all about a world or about a country that has already been set to zero. And the assault of Godzilla is taking them even lower than that it's Minus One.
Yes.
And once I understood that, it was like, Jesus.
It just keeps giving, this movie. It doesn't stop giving. So I think it's probably about time we start wrapping up, Mark. You got anything else to say about this movie?
No, man, I'm thoroughly emotionally drained.
Oh dear. So for info on the music we have used in this episode, please see the episode description. So that's it. The podcast is finished. You can follow me at WriterGMGroves on Twitter/X, Facebook and Instagram. Mark?
You can't find me anywhere. I'm not crying about Godzilla. Fuck you.
If you want to read my work, check out the website in the podcast episode description. I've written an essay about Godzilla Minus One on there, which I'm very proud of. There you will find articles, reviews, fiction here and there. So without further ado, I will bid you farewell and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Catch you later.